Welcome, good morning everybody to the HS2 Select Committee. We've got some windows open, so I hope that helps the ambience of the committee room. We're back with Hillingdon. This morning we have also the Right Honourable Cheryl Gillan booked in at 2 o'clock to give a preliminary talk about presentations on tunnels. And we start with Howie. Welcome, Mr. Creek. Would you like to kick off?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Creek, Karen, who's the Chairman of the Trustees, and James, the son. And they'll be speaking a little bit later on. We're here to present a petition on behalf of Hillingdon Outdoor Activity Centre and all the tens of thousands of users of it. They're obviously not here to speak, so we're the voice for them. And what we're protesting about, and what we're petitioning about, is the imminent extinguishment of HOAC by HS2. That's the word that they have recently introduced in their dealings with us. I am the principal of Hillingdon Outdoor Activity Centre, and along with a small group of others, I helped start it many years ago. So I have a fairly intimate knowledge of the way the thing works. We started, before it became a charity in '92, we started a couple of years before that as a management agreement to try and get things going.
And what you took over was?
Sorry?
What was there before you started?
There was a local authority sailing centre, but it was very low key, and the council have closed it because of cuts. So, yeah, there was a little bit of infrastructure, but nothing like it exists now. Can I assume that you have access to this document, Alistair Humphreys? Can I recommend that you read it? I'm just going to quote something from it. This is a gentleman that came and did a little bit of filming at HOAC, but his comments sum up what we're talking about, the value of HOAC, what have we. He talks about a magical oasis of wilderness, children everywhere doing holiday summer activity courses, kids were sailing, swinging off rope swings, learning how to climb. It's not just us who are protesting, it's everybody who visits HOAC who, and I know that some of you have been there. I think it wasn't the brightest of days or the busiest of days when you came, but you have some idea of what we're talking about when we are discussing HOAC. Can we have slide 2, please? Right. Just put in context where the centre is. It consists mainly of a lake, a 45-acre lake. That is the substantial feature of the lake. That's important when you're looking at relocation issues. A 45-acre lake. We do all water activities there, sailing, canoeing, windsurfing, all that sort of thing. And when it's in full use, that lake is full, used to its capacity. It's in the Colne Valley Park, which West London's Lake District, as it's been called. As you can see, there's a string of lakes going north-south. It's a beautiful area. Key feature is it's right next to the urban area of West London. Hillingdon.
Bridge or?
We're in the Northwood and Pinner, Nick Hurd's constituency. Nick Hurd's constituency, Northwood and Pinner.
Yeah.
But he's actually in the borough of Hillingdon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And where does the Uxbridge constituency start? Because I recall that Sir John Randall came to HOAC the day we were on the site visit.
I couldn't tell you where the boundary between the Uxbridge and between Boris Johnson's and Nick Hurd's constituencies are. Very close, I would imagine. So the proximity to a very large number of population, schools, colleges, young people, what have we, key factor in this. Another key factor is the access. You've got the M20, you can see the M25 there, the M40. Anybody wishing to get to HOAC, provided they're running, which is these days quite an issue, can get to HOAC. It's very accessible, it's in Hillingdon, and it's right where the population needs it to be. Important factors when you're looking at relocation. Next slide, please. Okay, just a very brief, it's a community facility. For a community facility to start, you need someone with a vision, someone prepared to put the effort in. This chap, Bert May, back in '62, got the idea. He was a teacher in a local school, wanted to start a sailing club, found HOAC, they just dug it, still working it actually. Started a sailing club, it became a community sailing club, Local authority, Hillingdon, took it over, became a youth sailing club, and unfortunately it then closed because of council cutbacks. That's when we come into the picture. We took it over and run it as an educational charity now. Key point here is community facilities like this don't just grow on trees. They have to have somebody, some people, a group of people who work to make the thing make it thrive. You can't just decide that you're going to put this somewhere else. The people don't go with it. Can we have the next slide, please? Put it in context of how many people use Howick. 22,000 young people, and that's annually, and about 40,000 people come through the gates every year. Not small beer. It's a very well used facility. Next slide, please. Big society, it's a word that's bandied about, it's very popular when people are talking about facilities and doing facilities at limited cost. Well, Howick doesn't actually cost the government directly anything. It's the community providing resources for the community at minimal cost to the government. So it's the ideal situation. We do the work, the people get the benefit, and the government also benefits because of the facility provided. And the London Borough of Hillingdon have seen the benefit of that, and they support it and have supported it right from the beginning. I put in there the amount of grant support we've got. That just gives you an idea. That was a bumper year last year. For £176,000, that has come from, in 1 year, from local businesses, local authority, lottery grants, all sorts of sources. It's not small beer, and it's used to buy equipment. Can we have the next slide, please? Just give you an idea of the sort of equipment that money has bought. The top left-hand corner, there's two what are called BOMA carts. They're disabled wheelchairs, off-road wheelchairs. This is so that people that use Howick can get around, can join in, can feel part of the activities. They're £11,000 each. But the local company saw that Howick was doing a good job, saw a need for it, financed it. So totally supported by the local authority. In the other two photographs, access dinghies, challenger dinghies, both for special needs for disabled people, totally adapted. We've got 5 of the access dinghies, 2 of the challenger dinghies. They're in use every week with disabled people. There's a lot of activity going on at Howick, a lot of value. The powerboat you can see in the background, that's like a landing craft. We can get wheelchairs on that, give wheelchair users a ride, or if they're up to it, they can learn to drive the boat. They're not being excluded. It's an inclusive centre. We try and include everybody. Next slide, please. Just to give you an idea of the sort of thing that goes on here, as I say, this is every weekend and sometimes more than that. We've got all the facilities, special boats, special hoists, special training. It's a combination of trained staff and volunteers who we train, disability awareness, that sort of thing, so that disabled people like this chap Ian, he gets on a Saturday to go out, have the freedom of the water, to sail his own boat. The rest of the week he's in his wheelchair, can't do anything. So really valuable. It's a lifeline to a lot of people, not something to be thrown away lightly. Next slide, please. Accessible, affordable, open gate policy. Anybody can, we have opening times where it's staffed, and all the rest of that sort of thing. Anybody can turn up at the gate, and we have something to offer them. Sailing, canoeing, windsurfing courses, birthday party, whatever. It's accessible, they can get there. It's affordable, it's a charity, we don't make profit. Anything we do make is ploughed back in, and that's why we have very good equipment and lots of it. Next slide, please. I'd like to pass over to Karen and James here. Just a few words.
Okay. My name's Karen Snagscale. I'm the Chair of Trustees. As Jeff said, and he said a lot about Howick, Howick is a charitable trust, and it's my privilege to be able to give something back to Howick. I've come today to talk about the community spirit of Howick and tell you a little bit about why Howick is really important to our community, bringing my son along as an example and myself along as an example of what Howick has done for us. I started sailing when I was 11 years old. I started sailing with my brother through a friend of his. And I started sailing through Oppie Club and the courses at Howick. And at 15, I trained to be a sailing instructor. I then qualified fully at 16 and worked as a safety officer and a duty officer at Howick. Spent my summer holidays and my university holidays at Howick working as an instructor. My father was one of the original trustees at Howick, setting up the charitable trust when it was taken over from the London Borough of Hillingdon. And when he retired, I became a trustee, eventually becoming the chair of trustees. I don't work so much as an instructor anymore, but becoming chair of trustees is my way of giving back. It's been a big part of my life. I met my husband, who sails there at Howick, and it has really featured in my life. And I think that Howick is a place where everybody is able to find some way of experiencing opportunities that aren't available elsewhere. And I'm proud that my son now, and he's going to talk a little bit about the things he does there, is now able to take over the family tradition. Just showing you some of the things that we have on offer at Howick, but we run sailing courses, canoeing, rowing is something we do now as well, but many land-based things as well, high ropes courses, caving, archery, fencing, all these things that we offer for schools, for families, for groups, for people with special needs, things that aren't available anywhere else in the locality. All these things will be lost shortly if we can't locate somewhere else or something else isn't done. These things I was able to enjoy, and I hope many people in the future are able to enjoy. Jeff's highlighted it is a charitable trust. We're a non-profit making organisation, and we do provide opportunities for everybody, and he's shown you some of the ways these things are available for people with special needs, and that is a main feature that the trust are interested in. Just going to get James to talk to you a little bit before I continue about some of the things that he's done and when he started sailing.
Hi, I'm James Nosgill and I'm 11 years old. I started sailing when I was 7. I've done quite a few courses at Howick, enjoyed them. I've joined a terror club. I've done quite a few RYA courses at Howick, and Howick supported me with some training and coaching for events including the London Youth Games, London Traveller Series and REA London REA Zone Championships. Howick supported me in application to John Merrick Trust. I've been awarded a boat to continue training and competing in events, and I'm going to the Nationals in Weymouth. In August. I'm now a member of Pico Club, and I race on Wednesdays and sometimes Sundays. This Sunday I'm competing in the London Youth Games, and Howick supported me to be able to do that.
Will that be in the Picos or in the Optimist?
It would be in my own boat, so it's a topper.
James is just one of several of our young sailors that are off now competing in events and who've been awarded boats in a trust. So they're off at weekends, and that's only with Howick support. We do very well in the London Youth Games, and we're only beaten by Tower Hamlets as Hillingdon, so that would be a real loss.
So it's 2 places with the best facilities which do best,
Yes.
with talent.
Yes. So it would be a real loss if we lost our sailing team. And our rowers do very well as well, so it would be a real shame if we lost our sailing team. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, James. Next slide, please. Okay, just very briefly, Howick runs lots of courses, but one of the flagship ones is the Young Leaders courses. This is the group from 1 year. It's totally oversubscribed. It's a life skills course. We teach leadership skills, hard skills like sailing, canoeing, windsurfing, what have we. This group of people subscribe to becoming volunteers as part of the deal. So the disabled sailing and that sort of thing that goes on, the summer holiday courses, part of the course is that they give their time freely to help. So in order to pass the course, they have to become volunteers, which they most of them do exceptionally well, and they carry on after they finish the course. If they enjoy that and they show ability, they can then go on to become instructors. We run a graduate scheme where we assist them all to go on to become instructors. That can lead to employment, and we get full circle. Young leaders come in, often start like James, very young age, work through all the courses, end up instructing at HOAC, full circle, and it helps them with their careers, CVs, their confidence when they go for interviews. They're used to talking to groups, used to instructing. Real valuable asset to them and to the centre. We're proud to be able to deliver it every year. Next slide, please. Employment. HS2 talks of creating jobs for 20,000 or more. HOAC only employs 70. Most of those are part-time jobs, have we, but most of them are young people. Most of them are young people like those young leaders who have been trained, who have come through the system, and it's their first job, first responsibility. It's the training for life. So a first job at HOAC gives them the starting point before they move on, and some will stay, some will come back, like Karen, but it's a grounding. So these people will lose their jobs, finished. Some of them are permanent employees, they're going to lose their jobs. Just to put it in perspective at the moment, all the people at HOAC have been hanging on for 5 years, waiting for the axe of HS2 to fall. Their lives are in limbo. Some of them haven't got married, haven't bought houses, haven't had kids, just waiting to hear the decision of what's going to happen. So this is the pinnacle of it. We come to you to ask for you to make a decision, to decide, do they have jobs? Does HOAC have a future? Or is that it? Next slide, please.
Mr. Cricket, I think you mentioned a figure of 70 employees, is that right?
70.
70. Is that full-time equivalents or is it...
No, that's total number on the payroll.
Right.
A lot of those just do a couple of weeks in the summer holidays,
right.
Weekends, that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Would you have a figure in your head for what the number of full-time equivalents would be?
I'd be guessing, but it's probably about 30.
Right. Thank you very much.
Okay, HOAC, the centre, the site, which is probably what we're talking about here, but it's not just a site, it's a hub. There's, put on there, a whole range of stuff, and there's a lot more as well. If you take HOAC out the community, you take out the vast majority of this. Some of it may be able to relocate elsewhere. But at the moment, HOAC is a real hub. Lots of things happen because of HOAC. A valuable community hub. Next slide, please. Give you an idea of the sort of demand. HOAC doesn't do a lot of marketing because of where we are, because of the population from West London, which is right on our doorstep. We get massive demand. People want to use HOAC. They need HOAC. That just gives you an idea of the number of kayaks we've got. 150 kayaks. That's just kayaks, not dinghies, not windsurfers, not stand-up paddle boards, just kayaks. And they're all in use at various times during the season. Next slide, please. Dragon boating, sort of thing that we do and we do with the kids. It's fun, it's physical activity, it's team building, it's challenging, and there's 80 kids involved there in actually doing something worthwhile. HS2 closed the centre, finished. There's nowhere else around that kids can do that sort of thing. There are dragon boat clubs, they're for adults, they're for racing. HOAC is for kids, and that's what we offer. Next slide, please. Just so you get a concept that I'm not talking abstractly, as we speak, on site today, 281 kids, the schools are listed there. If you take HOAC out of the equation, they've got nowhere else to go. Next slide, please. This is to try and put it into perspective where the kids come from. A lot of our kids come from inner London, all of West London. Not just the Uxbridge, Ruislip and that sort of, much further in, because we are the only facility that they can access. A lot of those don't have fields, ponds and that sort of thing. This is just pond dipping. Most kids take huge delight in catching a few bugs, tadpoles, frog newts, whatever, and looking on the microscope, did a bit of field studies. Something HOAC offers, they don't get access elsewhere. Next slide, please. Rope swing. When I was a kid, all of us went out, surrounded by fields, threw a rope over a tree, swung across the ditch, fell in. Occasionally someone broke a wrist, broke an arm, whatever, but that's what people did. These days, kids come to HOAC, a rope swing, 99% of them, never seen one, never experienced one. It's the most popular activity at HOAC. They come along, oh yeah, they spend all day doing that, forget kayaking, rope swing. It's an experience that they don't get elsewhere. Another value of HOAC. Move on, please. Next slide.
We don't let them break their arms.
Called walking the plank.
We don't let them break their arms.
That's why we have water. Rowing. You'll hear more about rowing in a minute, but rowing is a fairly recent acquisition at Howick. British Rowing helped us set up rowing. It's now a big activity. It's the only place where ordinary kids, local kids, can learn to row, experience rowing. Yes, on the Thames, you've got all the rowing clubs, but most kids, when I was a kid, I wouldn't even have dreamt of going to Henley or anywhere like that. We have kids through the summer holidays, every Saturday, rowing. Fabulous activity, physical activity, discipline, all the things that go with it. Without Howick, local kids did not get access to that sort of thing. Next slide. The high ropes team building. I think we've got a video which is on the next slide. Fabulous activity, but let's see the video. I think give you a bit more. There was some music to it, but I don't think that's got lost in the translation.
The video's working. We've had a few of those. Normally it's emailed to us about a week afterwards, but...
These are youngsters doing team building, climbing. It's very short, just out of interest. This was made by a commercial film company from one of these drones who were appalled that Howick was going to be closed, and they volunteered to make this little video for us. No charge to Howick. You can see the sort of experience the kids are getting, adrenaline pumping. They're challenging their fears. It's safe, very safe, but you don't think it is. They're all working together. It's an extremely good team building, bonding experience.
How big is the drone?
Sorry?
How big is the drone?
It was about 2.5 foot in diameter, carbon fibre, very powerful thing. It disappeared out of sight up the top when it went out, and it could fly in all sorts of weather. No, it's very, very impressive. Had a stabilised camera on it as well, which is how you get these sort of quality shots. Thank you. The next slide, please. Okay, sticking with that one for a second. That's what you've just seen. 50 kids can be working on that at any one time. Totally different to Go 8. The kids are involved in it. They support each other, they learn to trust each other, they're holding the rope for each other. Brilliant physical, mental, challenging, excellent activity. There's about £750,000 worth of equipment there. So if you try moving that, it wouldn't move, it's wood. Been there 10 years. You couldn't move it, you had to build a new one. Next slide, please. Right, rafting. We do lots and lots of rafting. Message from rafting is, part of having loads of fun, is you get out of life what you put into it. You build a rotten raft, you swim. You don't win the race. You build a good raft, you stay afloat and you win. So, very small things, but it's where kids get their messages, incremental, growing up. Life skills. Move on. Next slide, please. Sailing. Sailing is one of the biggest features of Howick. You can see we've got masses of boats and masses of kids sailing them, wall-to-wall sailing dinghies in the summer holidays. And as James has said, we provide the sailing team for the London Youth Games. When we're looking at the size of the lake and the value of the lake to Howick, you need a 45-acre lake or something thereabouts to get what we do to happen. Some of the boats, when the youngsters do the advanced skills, they're into more powerful boats, trapeze boats, spinnaker boats. You need the length of water. Howick's only just big enough. We'd have a much bigger lake if we could. But the lake is only just big enough for the sort of things that we do. Anything smaller, you start to lose the quality. And quality is really what Howick is about. Next slide, please. As James said, London Youth Games. The key thing to note here is that we're providing training for the Ealing and Harrow teams because they haven't got anywhere like Howick. So they access us and we provide the training for them. Next slide, please. We don't just work, if you think about the pyramid, sport for all, which is really what Howick is. Broad base, ordinary kids coming in, learning basic skills. A few of them go on. This chap, Stuart Jones, started sailing at Howick at 13. He is one of the few that can get to the top, and he got to the very top. He was world contender. Contender's a type of boat thing sailing there. He was world contender champion twice. He was national champion about a dozen times, I think. Very good sailor. Probably wouldn't be sailing now if he hadn't had access to somewhere like Howick. Next slide. Sorry?
2012 Olympic squad.
No.
But he's got a chance, has he? In
No, the contender isn't an Olympic class. So
Right.
no, there's lots of different classes of sailing boats. The contender's one of them. So it's an international class, and he did very well in it. And as I say, to become world champion, anything is an achievement. But the key thing is he started at Howick. Next slide, please. On the same vein, very recently, Hugo, who's a member of the Hillingdon Junior Canoe Club, who operate from Howick, he just won some canoe championships at the Olympic course, and he's now going to Ottawa in the autumn to compete for the World Championships. So there's a lot of work going on, a lot of activity, loads of kids doing basic paddling, basic skills training. Some of them, Hugo here, move on to the very top. Next slide, please. And this is Heidi, same championships. She didn't quite win it, but she did well enough. She's going to Ottawa as a reserve. She's in the Junior Canoe Club and was a young leader, went through the young leadership course. Next slide, please. Achievement. We've seen people that achieve the top, world champions, national champions. Achievement can be at any level. This lad has just got to the top of the climbing wall. That's achievement. You can see in his eyes, he's got there, done it. So Howick helps kids achieve success breeds success. The kids need that sort of experience. They don't want to be downtrodden. They need to be lifted up. Next slide, please. Learning outside the classroom. This is a simple team building activity. Just out of interest, HS2 goes right across the middle of that. That'd be under the viaduct, the aqueduct, right? Aqueduct? Yeah, viaduct. Yeah, train goes over the top of that anyway. So, what we do at Howick, outdoor education, complements what schools do. It's an add-on. It's not statutory, but because you can see that schools value it, because very many schools send their kids along to Howick to experience outdoor education. Next slide, please.
I didn't last first across.
Ah, that's the trick. You can come along and try it. Next slide, please. Okay, a lot of stuff we do in summer holidays, particularly certificated. Kids go away with a certificate, with a warranty that they've achieved something, and a ladder to climb. All works towards the national curriculum and towards their general education, helps them in later in life skills and what have we. So it's a really good fit, a good match, schools, outdoor education. Why outdoor education isn't more prevalent, I don't know, it's cost. Normally, at the moment, outdoor education centres are closing like wildfire because of cuts in council expenditure. Howick still exists, just. Next slide, please. Just to give you an idea of the sort of thing that we try to achieve, not pretending we achieve it in all of them, but things like communication. The reason I've homed in on that, because to communicate, the kids' worst skills are usually communications. It's a me, shout, I'll go first, I'll do this, I'll do that. Half of what we do is trying to get them to think about the team, consideration for other people. Communication is about listening, about talking. You can't do that with a train buzzing over your head at 240 mile an hour. So a lot of what goes on here just could not happen with a high-speed train anywhere near you. And you saw the sound profiles from London Borough of Hillingdon yesterday. It's just not a feasible thing to happen. We couldn't do it. We wouldn't try. Next slide, please. Outdoor education for all. Now this is just the all aboard. You try and get 4 kids on a tiny platform up high and it's all wobbling about. It's a real challenge for you. You can see them reaching down. They don't really want the other person there, but they've got to be there, so it's a challenge for them. Outdoor education should be available to all people. At the moment it's available to West London young people. It's in danger of being eradicated, extinguished. Next slide, please. Just to give you an idea, what this was very recently, a school that came in. I just thought it was a really good way of her saying thank you. Just another primary school. We get a lot of feedback like this, not usually quite so eloquent, but I honestly can't think of any way you could make Howick better. Fabulous venue. Please take that on board. Next slide, please. We had an adventurous activities licensing inspection a couple of weeks ago as part of the government's licensing rules. The inspector wrote this, even he realised that Howick was due to be closed. Key thing in there, that the value of outdoor centres where people live in rural areas. So even people, Tim is a very experienced inspector, knows his job, he visits lots of centres, lots of areas, but he was appalled to think that Howick would just be written off. Next slide, please. Okay, so another the issue. I'm sure the panel, this committee, have seen this slide many, many times. This is an artistic impression of the viaduct going across Howick. Not very realistic in the sense that Howick has just been superimposed on Howick. It's nice and green and pleasant. That's Howick as it is with Plonk Viaduct. All of that you see there, that's Howick, would not exist under the viaduct. The sailing would not exist. I'm not going to go into any details, but sailing with a viaduct across the lake, even if everything else was equal, would not be a good idea. The winds going through the viaduct, for instance, sailors need steady wind. The wind going through the viaduct would be all over the place. It would be a very difficult job to sail through the viaduct. Anyway, that gives you an idea of how it's the perfect storm. The viaduct, HS2, takes out Howick completely. Next slide, please. This is Girls' Brigade camping.
Not that matters terribly. If I'm an 11-year-old sailing, say, off Seaview on the Isle of Wight through a lot of moored yachts, how is that different to sailing past viaduct piers?
You put up with sailing through the moored yachts till you get to steady wind when it's fun. It's not fun in the moored yachts. You can do it, but you wouldn't do it for fun. And you wouldn't do it to learn skills. I suppose it is a skill, but once you get out in the open water, that's when sailing comes into its own. This is the Girls' Brigade camping on our campsite. The viaduct goes right across that campsite. So they would be camping under a massive great lump of noisy concrete. No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't be camping at all. No one would. Next slide, please. Okay, this is one of HS2's map, Howick in red. Just to give you an idea, and I think you've seen these maps from Hillingdon Borough as well. Let's say the perfect storm takes out our car park, takes out our woods, takes out everything, the lane, the farmhouse as you come into Howick, and takes out the lake. There's not a lot left of the rural, the magical ideal of an outdoor activity centre in the middle of the green belt in the Colne Valley Park. It's a building site, it's a noisy site, and once HS2 is finished, there's still going to be all these substations, work sites, and you're still going to have a noisy train screaming overhead every 4 minutes. Next slide, please. Just to make sure we're clear, HS2 don't intend Howick to come back. They're filling in part of the lake, so 16% of the lake is going to be filled in anyway. So that was done without any consultation. HS2 planned to fill in 16% of the lake. So there's no serious plan about Howick returning. That's what they're planning to do. That's in their proposals. Next slide, please. When the plan was first mooted, we were appalled to find we were described as a few flooded gravel pits. It took us a long time to appreciate just what the impact of the HS2 plans were. And we started shouting, so HS2 knew we were there very quickly. One of our members, who's a railway engineer, produced a report which was sent to HS2. They didn't want to know about it, but then he got on to his MP who asked the question on the house, so HS2 then had a look at it. It's an alternative route which bypasses Howick, leaves Howick alone, goes to the side. And HS2 looked at it, did a very brief response, said, no, sorry, it'll cost a bit more money, we're not going there. We did try. That was that's a serious different route, and that was a long time ago. HS2 could and should have taken more notice of what was on the ground. HOAC's had widespread support, which I'm sure you're all aware, from a whole host of people, including MPs and members of the House of Lords, what have we. Discussions with HS2, very belated about relocation, lots of community consultations and things which were just procedures rather than trying to get a result. I think probably a year and a half or so, maybe slightly more, since HS2 actually took us seriously and started looking around to see what they could do with us. Next slide, please. Possible outcomes of the HS2 project. They could tunnel under the Colne Valley, which you've heard a lot about. The advantages of that, from our point of view, it preserves HOAC, leaves us operating, and it leaves the Colne Valley as more or less as is. There might be a few ventilation shafts and that sort of thing, but compared to the devastation which is planned for the area, that is by far and away the best option. The alternative at the moment is to close HOAC, which I hope you think is unthinkable. At the bottom I put in very small letters, relocation. Next slide, please. Relocation. Well, there are some major disadvantages to relocation before you get into the mechanics of it. But HOAC is deeply embedded in the community. The people that run HOAC, the volunteers, they come from HOAC and the surrounds of HOAC. If you try and transpose that from HOAC to somewhere else, if it's very, very close, you might do it. If it's not very close, you're going to lose what you've already got, community facility. You can create something else, but it won't be HOAC. The second point there are no suitable sites available. We did a lot of work on this, and latterly HS2 have as well. It's a very crowded area. There's lots of people, not a lot of space. HOAC's requirements are fairly specific, and one of those is that there's a lake of suitable size, something equivalent to what we've got now. Very few sites. We came up with 3, I think, that were possibilities, all of which HS2 have said no. No, it's unequivocal. Meeting last Tuesday, no. We can go into the reasons why they said no, but it is not. It was made very clear, and I think the Hillingdon Borough Solicitor said the same, and I've got emails from Nick Hurd MP saying exactly the same. HS2's message is no to 1, no to 2, no to 3. There are no alternatives out there. The only thing they did offer was that we could stay on site while they build. Now, if you saw the slides yesterday of building a viaduct, we wouldn't even contemplate it. There is absolutely no way that HOAC would devalue kids' education to the extent of staying when HS2 start their work. Trustees have decided HOAC will close if that happens. Timing. Because everything started very late, HS2 schedule, we had an assurance recently that we could stay to 2017. And to give you an idea of how things have worked, we had 2015, we had a letter telling us we had to be out by. We had a letter for 2016. We've now got a letter giving us assurance we can stay to 2017. And I noticed that Mr Mould here has said that, and Martin Wells also indicated that there might be a chance of another year's extension. We don't want it. We've had 5 years of living with the blight of HS2. There is absolutely no point in extending the time lag. We need to invest in site. We need to invest in equipment. We need to invest in kids. We need some certainty. I think the time has now come, and what we're asking you for is a decision. Either the HS2 goes in a tunnel, or if there is something out there, which I don't know about, and HS2 certainly don't know about, a sensible relocation, but we do need some certainty. The staff at HOAC need some certainty about what to do with their lives, whether they go and look for other jobs, because once they start losing, we're on a slippery slope. And I think it was mentioned by one of the committee yesterday about what state HOAC was in and how it would lose business, and it has maintained itself, but mainly because the staff have stayed with HOAC. If they start leaving, If everyone recognises that the end is just round the corner, then Howick will close inevitably anyway. Next slide. Oh, sorry, before you go.
You mentioned that lead time is very important for schools to book and clubs to book, because they tend to do their programmes a year in advance at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you do have to sort of look ahead in order to ensure you've got your clients.
Yeah. Most of the schools book a year ahead. If you don't book a year ahead, you don't get in. We're regularly turning people away who want to try and get in July and August. There's no space for them. So Howick has to plan at least a year ahead. I'll just put down the bottom costs there. We estimate the cost of moving Howick in excess of 7 million, just the fabric of what we've got. It's not something, it doesn't look that valuable, but when you're starting adding it up, it's not stuff you just go and buy off the shelf. It's all purpose made, developed and built over many years. It would cost an awful lot of money to relocate Howick, and that's when you've got a site with facilities, domains, water and sewage and all the rest of it. It's an expensive exercise to kick Howick off where it is. Next slide, please. Okay, what we're asking from the committee: require HS2 to tunnel under the Colne Valley, and that's a win-win for, certainly from where I'm sitting, for everybody around, for all of West London, and for the kids. And you really, I think one of the major things of this, we're not just thinking here and now, not just the James, but the future Jameses. Howick should and could continue for generations to come. No reason why not, unless you let HS2 just squash it into the ground. Next slide, please. Okay, hopefully I've given you a picture of Howick and where we are. The negotiations with HS2 as far as relocation, there are no options on the table. There is no negotiation as far as I'm concerned. We had a meeting with HS2 last Tuesday. Last Tuesday we were told Denham Quarry was a non-starter unless we had accepted a small lake that you could sail on. We were told Troy Lake, which is one of the other options, was a non-starter because HS2 couldn't buy the land. And we were told Broadwater Lake was a non-starter, but HS2 said that right from the beginning. They didn't look at it. They did a report and said the kids were too noisy for the birds. Natural England would never look at it. So the three options that have been around, HS2 has ruled out. The only one we were presented with on last Tuesday was to stay on site while HS2 starts building, and they would move us around from patch of grass to patch of grass as various bits of HS2 got built. As I've indicated during this presentation, it's absolutely a non-starter. We would not do that to the kids. We would not even try it. Trustees have decided they would close the centre. I hope that's not acceptable to the committee. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Creek, and thank you to your witnesses. Henry?
Well, after you, Chairman, you've got some questions?
No.
Yes. It'd be very helpful. I mean, obviously, you've made your case strongly, and your suggestion is a tunnel, which, of course, is supported by the local MPs, by Hillingdon Borough Council. And we've looked at, I didn't know if you were in the room yesterday, you probably were, when we heard all the costings
in the morning.
Both sides. And one of the things the committee is going to have to look at is the cost of that. What would be the cost of diverting the line? Because I remember you, in your presentation, you said that initially you put forward proposals to move the line slightly further to the north. I mean, obviously, once one goes down that particular solution, you're then having, you may solve the Howick problem, but you may then well create numerous challenges and problems elsewhere. But what would be did you do any costings of moving the line? HS2
did.
Right, and what was the outcome?
I haven't got that with me, I'm afraid, but I think it was about 50 million or something like that. It wasn't.
And what would be obviously Howick is well integrated with the other activities around the Colne Valley, the other clubs, the other organisations. What would have been the knock-on effect of moving the line to the north? Would it have had an impact on, for example, the narrow boats, on some of the habitats, etc., etc.? What were the consequences going to be? Can you recall what?
No, I don't think it went into any depth like that. I think the report that I saw in response to Pat Wyman's proposals was very dismissive I think there were a few paragraphs that said they'd done a back of the notepad calculation. It was going to cost more money, and as you've pointed out, it would take HS2 and someone else would get the blight. And on that basis, they weren't going to take it any further.
Yes, I mean, I think what I'm driving at is that the tunnel option is obviously going to be extremely expensive. We've seen in other cases where the committee has looked at diverting the line by a small degree. You know, that very often can be an extremely cost-effective solution, although one's got to be aware that you may solve one problem and then create another problem. So, and what I'm really interested to hear, and we're going to hear it obviously from HS2 in a moment, is what is Plan B. I really am keen to explore possible relocation. I certainly take on board your point about how you've got this unique asset and replicating it somewhere else is going to be very difficult. But I simply suggest that where there's a will, there's a way, and if HS2, after all, are going to be spending a lot of money on the project, and sorting out Howick would be a tiny proportion of that if we can actually get everyone on the same page. So I think we need to hear what HS2 have to say.
Henry's getting at, if we move the line a little bit to the north, would it make any difference?
If it moves sufficiently to the north from Howick's point of view, definitely.
I don't think I'm not sure we could move it sufficiently. I think we can move it a little bit, but not
if you move it a few yards, no difference. If you move it sort of 300 yards, definitely.
Right. And just to come back to the point, looking at the different activities that you promote at Howick, it's very impressive what you do. And you mentioned that you do need a certain critical mass in terms of water acreage. I'd have thought from the point of view of a lot of the activities we saw are land-based, that they could exist around the viaduct, the land-based ones, I would suggest, not during construction, but once it's complete. But as far as the water-based activity is concerned, the rowing, the canoeing, those sort of the dragon boating would all be able to take place to the southern part, the southwestern part of the lake. But the sailing, you mentioned, does need more space. To have proper sailing, you need the area. And one of the things I do want to, it's the point that Sir Peter touched on, is that I'm not an experienced sailor, but what you're saying is that there would actually be effectively an exclusion zone around the concrete pillars of the viaduct. I mean, if you stayed at Howick, how would you configure the sailing? Would you not be able to sail in the north eastern part of the lake?
I think I tried to make it very clear. Howick could not stay at Howick. One of the reasons, and at face value, it looks like you can put land activities around where the viaduct is. If you look at the noise profiles that LBH put up yesterday, what we do with kids, it's an educational experience as well as an activity experience. We talk to them, we do life skills with them. It's education. You can't do that with a 240 mile an hour train screaming past. Now, the noise profile for that covers the whole of Howick. Yes. You're not going to get the quiet experience. The campsite at the moment, at night, is silent. It's as quiet as you get anywhere around London.
Can you hear the Chiltern Railway or the motorway or
the Chiltern Railway, which runs to the side, it's been there longer than the lake, I think. It's tree-lined, the trains go at about, 40, 50 mile an hour or something, but they're doing nothing like HS2 does, and they're quiet. Yes, they're quiet. Occasionally a freight train comes past and you hear that, and we stop for the freight train because you can't hear yourself.
The aeroplanes, are you on the flight line?
We get a very occasional Denham Airfield aircraft, but luckily we're in between Norfolk and Heathrow, so we're very lucky aircraft-wise.
Well, I look forward to hearing from HS2 because I'm really keen to see how it survive.
Is it you, Mr. Miller?
Yes, I'm going to call Mr. Miller, if I may.
Okay.
Mr. Miller, just lest there are people in the room who don't know who you are. You're the Director of Environment at HS2.
That's right.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Miller, just to set the scene, the bill is supported by an environmental statement which assesses the impacts of the railway through the Colne Valley, and one of the things it considers is the effects of the construction and operation of the railway, including the issue of noise that Mr. Creek has just mentioned. Assesses those matters on insofar as HOAC is concerned at their current location on Harefield Number 2 Lake, doesn't it? Yes. And just to cut to the quick, it identifies and acknowledges that both during construction and operation of the railway, HS2, the railway will have a major adverse effect on the Hillingdon Outdoor Activities Centre.
It does indeed.
Yeah. Now, with that having been acknowledged back in the environmental statement, which is submitted in support of the bill, work has been going on with HOAC and their representatives since that time to seek to identify opportunities to enable them to move to an alternative suitable location in the Colne Valley. That's correct, isn't it?
That's right. That's the work that Mr. Creek highlighted.
And in the pack, if the committee and others are interested in glancing at them, there is a report, a lake options report. It's at P 6207, runs to a number of pages, and it identifies, amongst other things, Broadwater Lake, Troy Lake, and Denham Quarry, amongst other lakes within the Colne Valley, which are then considered as to regards their merits as possible relocation facilities.
Yeah, this is an example of the work that we carry out when petitioners put forward their views, their concerns, and we examine those and see whether there are alternatives to help overcome or otherwise ameliorate the situation.
And one of the we've been assisted in that work by the work that HOAC themselves have commissioned, and if we just put up P6307. See a report that HOAC themselves commissioned, essentially for the same purpose, dated August 2013, and it might be helpful in the light of a couple of points you're going to make in a moment if we just turn to page 3 of that document, and we can see that one of the lakes, one of the sites that they themselves considered was Denham Roundabout Quarry. You see that?
Yes, that's right.
And you'll see that they made a number of points in relation to that. The conclusion at that time was that there were two factors that told against that as an opportunity to relocate. One was timescale, and the other was the possible effect of the Heathrow spur.
Can I just point out that it also says about the size of the lake?
Yeah. Okay. The Heathrow spur is. Do we think that's a problem so far as the credentials of this site are concerned?
No, I don't believe so. No, not now.
Now, timing, I'm going to ask you about in a minute, but just note that was the HOAC's view. And if we just turn to P620713, just to see where HS2's position on that lake. In the lake options report I mentioned a moment ago, and you just confirmed, you see key issues: unfinished lake with resulting major risks in relation to availability and appropriate design. So essentially the same constraints identified, I think, by both HOAC and HS2. Is that right?
Yes, that is right. It's interesting that the reports are drawing a similar sort of conclusion. I take your points about the area of the lake. It doesn't provide the like-for-like replacement of the lake when you look at HOAC's facilities at the moment.
25 as opposed to 45 acres, and the shape of it doesn't lend itself to sailing at all. And the discussions with HS2 are about digging it out, making a sensible sized lake there. Okay. And that was where I know HS2 did a lot of work, and it fell foul, I suspect, on the cost. At the moment, the gravel is being dug on the site, and it's being backfilled with cross-railed spoil, and the cost of stopping that.
Let's see if we can explore that a little bit further. to see what it might give us, and then perhaps we can have a further conversation about that.
Yeah. Should we go straight to that, to the quarry plan, actually, because it'd be worth just picking up where we are on this.
The size is, which you suggested, Mr. Creek, is that when they finish quarrying, that's what will be on offer. And that's 25.
Which isn't suitable.
And you need to go somewhat larger than that, even if you couldn't replicate what you've got.
Yeah, and as they're quarrying at the moment, the early discussion with HS2 were that we get them to, instead of backfilling a lake, they leave a big lake that then we could use, and it would have been a viable relocation site. But HS2 decided that wasn't viable.
Should we just go to P6206 and just have a look at the current restoration plan for that? And perhaps Mr. Miller will be able to just help the committee with one or two of the details. Now, just this is Mr. Miller, just help me with this. This is the we can see there's an area outlined in blue. Yeah. There's an area outlined in blue. That's effectively the existing quarry and emerging restoration operation, I think, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Some of these have got a restoration plan which has been approved. It's within that boundary, and I think the way to look at it broadly is going from south to north. That is being put into effect at the moment, and as they're sort of digging out, the space is being filled with water.
So, working from east to west, the lake that we see on the long, thin lake that we can see on the eastern side.
Yeah, that's just
lake
to the River Colne there. So, yeah.
That lake to be constructed, to be created, or already existing.
I believe that's already existing.
Right.
How big is that?
What's its acreage?
3.5. I'm told 17.5 acres.
7.5.
The long thin one.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
what's the acreage of the big one?
25.
And the small
And
lake.
is it possible to join the two up?
I don't believe it is. I think there are constraints on that site with some sewers in that ground, and I think you're right, there is some backfill in this particular location which constrains the sort of further extent of water in that particular location.
Constrains or makes it impossible?
I think it would be quite. I would have to check about the sewage arrangements. You might get a little bit more out of it, but I suspect that is the constraining factor then.
Well, the answer to that, when we did the work with HS2, they came up with several plans, and it was possible to dig a bigger lake. There's a lot of pylons and that around there. The lake that we're looking at the moment, which is the plan they're digging to at the moment, has an electric cable, a relatively low electric cable going across the top of it, which means the top part of the lake couldn't be used for sailing anyway.
Well, you can see there are 3 pylon runs. It's not easy to see on here. There's a black run in here. There's one, which I think is the one that you're pointing to, which there's a pylon here and a pylon right about there. And the cables do sag, as you say, and that sort of midpoint is just above the lake there. So, yes, you're right, it's not without its constraints in that location because of the overhead line, and in this location because of the underground sewage pipes, as I understand it. So I don't think I don't think you could sort of breach that bit of land there to join up the 2 lakes. I think that's what we're saying. But also you would have to look again, I think, at this location with the pylons and the cable run.
Effectively, you just focus on the centre. The quarrying operations are still going on broadly south to north, as you said a minute ago.
Yeah.
And the pylon runs effectively create a north-south channel, don't they? Along the boundaries, broadly along the boundaries of the central lake that we see on the screen in front of us.
Yes, that's right. If you take that line and that line, yes.
Now, we can see a red-lined area, which is being pointed out now. Just help us. What's that red line denote?
That's a further application for some additional works. And as I understand it, the two lines, red lines here, understand that the lake is getting close to that location there for the sort of dig out and restoration. There's about a sort of a cut-off point of where they sort of physically are at, around about that location.
And the time scales for continuing extraction, any sense from some of these as to how many years into the future they're going to be extracting, moving broadly south-north along that alignment?
Yeah, I understand that's going to 2017 up to broadly that point, and then going up to the blue line, that sort of area, 2019. So a couple of years off, but that's the plan as it's currently consented in the restoration scheme.
So that area, which takes that sort of extraction run, broadly speaking, moving south-north across the centre of this site, that in practice will involve the extraction of gravel along the, as we see that channel on the plan, over a period of up to another 8 odd years, well 6 odd years actually from now. Is that the point? 29. Did you say 19?
19.
Sorry, my fault.
It was 2019
4 years
here.
from now. Yeah.
There is a further aspect to the site, but we'll come on to that in a minute, I guess. But that's what's permitted at the moment, and it's sort of being built out, as you say, south-north, getting to 2017, roughly where the red lines are, 2019, as I understand it, closer to the blue lines to the north there.
I'm just trying to get a sense of, we're talking in the realms of potentialities here, and I'm very much conscious of that. I'm just trying to get a sense that if you bear in mind that what we have here is an extraction operation, this is gravel extraction, and as we know from elsewhere in the Colne Valley, what you're left with after you've extracted gravel is a water body. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the area that is shown on this plan in and around the red, which is shown as being, that's an area which is marked for restoration on this plan at the moment, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
But in order to achieve that, you'd be infilling, wouldn't you?
You would.
You'd be backfilling what would otherwise be a water body.
Yes.
So, I mean, just from a planning point of view, is there at least the potential for that lake to be the configuration of that lake to be changed through reducing the amount of backfill and retaining a greater area of water?
I would say yes. It's not without its planning issues, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility.
Right. And that obviously, I think the area of that lake as shown on that plan is 25 acres.
Yeah,
so
that's about right.
You know, you can get a sense that if one was to extend that...
sorry, for the lake, yes, 25
Yeah,
acres.
if one was to extend that water body so that, as it were, you broaden out at the point where it begins to narrow into the finger, you broaden that out to some degree, you're increasing the size of the lake, and you're also increasing the width of the lake as well.
That's right, yes. Yeah,
and just to get a comparable sense, we know that that Broadwater Lake and Troy Lake are both used for sailing and are popular sailing destinations, don't we?
Yes.
And the figure I have for Broadwater Lake is that the saleable area, that is the area which is available for sailing beyond the ecological exclusion zone, is 38 acres or thereabouts.
Yes, it's about 35, 38 where as I understand it, the buoys go across.
And Troy Lake is about 35 acres.
Yes, they're broadly similar.
Yeah. Okay. Now, just to get us, we know that the timing was an issue in relation to lake, and clearly remains an issue for the reasons that you've just given. But if we just remind ourselves of the position of the current position of the owner of that site, that is to say, the freehold owner, that's Buckinghamshire County Council.
That's right, yes.
And if we just turn up P62081, this is the leader of Bucks County Council, rising on the 1st of June. And if we just turn to the second page of that letter, the committee has seen some of this already, so I don't want to move quite quickly through it. But just picking it up in the middle of the page, Buckinghamshire County Council and South Bucks District Council last met with HS2 Limited for pre-application discussions to progress this relocation on the 7th of January 2015. They explained that a planning performance agreement could suit all parties, and this could take from 16 weeks to 6 months. HS2 Limited said they would probably also submit an additional provision to the bill. It's therefore disappointing that HS2 Limited now find that time is running out. Buckinghamshire County Council wrote to HS2 Limited on the 9th of April 2015 to offer to meet jointly with HOAC and HS2 Limited, and also to support by negotiating with Summerlees the backfilling of the quarry in order to try to facilitate and move this proposal forward. And then it refers to an email response from HS2 Limited, and it referred to the restrictions of the PERDA period. And then the final paragraph: we were previously told by HS2 Limited staff that engagement meetings of this type could continue during the PERDA period, but that no assurance could be offered. Since PERDA ended in early May, Bucks has still not been offered a meeting on this issue, and the window of opportunity for a successful relocation of HOAG is rapidly closing due to HS2 Limited's delays. And then if we just turn on to P61361, we've responded to that letter. 63161.
I think the letter from Bucks is quite interesting because it does appear to indicate that there's a willingness to look at that site, and you start to gain a little bit more confidence that if you're able to come forward with a different take on the application or the consent on that site, that would find favour. So I think it's quite an interesting turn. Maybe timing's a bit of an issue, but it's an interesting turn at this point in time.
Can I put it in context? We approached Bucks about this because HS2 had turned down the Denham site on the basis of one of the reasons they gave was the time it would take to get planning, the difficulty of get planning through from Bucks. So we approached Bucks and said, yeah, is this the case? This letter was initiated after our approach because Bucks were outraged that they were being blamed for the lack of progress on the Denham site.
Can I just ask you, Mr. Mill, on the assumption you have discussions with Buckinghamshire, clearly there's a planning process with the County Council. But when you talk about an additional provision, you would put Denham Quarry into this bill?
I don't think that we would think about that now. I think we'd be looking to deal with this. If Denham is going to work, I think we'd be looking to deal with it without additional provisions, for the very reason that the bill won't become law until early 17. So it doesn't work in timing terms.
Right. So on the assumption that HOAC would stay open for longer, which is an option.
Yeah.
And that Buckinghamshire and HS2, there was some serious negotiation about getting a decent size for this lake to replicate approximately what is in HOAC at the moment, then you would have to get on with that and have everything, your ducks in a row, literally.
As soon as we can.
As soon as you can.
Yeah.
In advance of royal assent.
Well, exactly. And certainly the idea is you've obviously got see the way the direction of travel here. We've currently been able to say to HOAC, we can guarantee we won't take possession of your site until at the earliest March 2017. We're hoping to be able to say that we can extend that till March 2018, and I'm hoping to be able to give a clear answer to that to the committee. I can't do it today, I'm afraid, because we're still working on the programme implications, but I'm hoping to be able to give you a clear answer on that, ideally by the end of this week. So that gives HOAC a cast iron guarantee that it can stay until whichever date that is. We then buy ourselves more time to get at least a substantial proportion of Denham Quarry, bearing in mind that this will be still towards the northern end a working quarry, a substantial proportion of Denham Quarry up and running. And I mean, Mr. Miller, are Summerlees, for example, as they're the operator here, are they familiar with quarrying operations, sharing a site with recreational sailing activity.
Sorry, summer league?
Yeah.
I believe they are, yeah.
Yeah. And so it can be done. And the idea is that we can try and use the timing on both sides, as it were, to work. But what I wanted to do, to put this letter up in front of you, sorry, I just wanted to show you, first of all, the main reason why we took the foot off the throttle a little in relation to Denham over recent months was because we were looking at Troy as an alternative which would overcome the timing difficulties for Denham, and that's reflected in the letter that you have in front of you. As it happens, Troy doesn't work because it's not available. So we're now in a position to go back to Denham and say, with the helpful invitation of Buckinghamshire County Council, let's have another look at Denham along the lines that that you and I have just discussed. I mean, is that a fair representation of it, Mr. Miller?
Yes, it is, yes.
And so I don't think I need to read this letter out, but it's on the screen. That's essentially saying let's resume those discussions. Yeah. Yes, of course.
Clearly, Mr. Creek is very frustrated because he sees his baby, his project, sort of going down the drain, and is frustrated that if you read the letter from Buckinghamshire, there's some implied criticism that you haven't actually been getting on with it. Now, I understand your reason you're looking somewhere else, yes, but this is becoming very, very, very urgent.
It is. I entirely accept that. And one name that we haven't mentioned during our exchanges just now is Howie. And it's absolutely vital, obviously, that we continue to have an engagement process in which we seek to respond to Howie's needs. And I perhaps just want to mention that at the most recent meeting that we had with Howie, which took place on the 9th of June the 9th of June, so just a few days ago, and Mr. Creek has expressed his sense of what came out of that meeting quite trenchantly. But actually, one point that I have a minute in front of me, and one point that did come out of that meeting on the minutes was precisely in line with what I just said. That is to say, we would now go forward with a review of the opportunity that Denham Quarry might present, and look to provide a timeline for relocation to that quarry as part of the work that we're now going to do, now that we've refocused onto that as the relocation.
Are we able to get some sort of timeline of discussions? Because clearly this is urgent and the committee need to know what's happening pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So
I think we can do that, and I'll procure that and get some sort of structured program set up.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean that's by way of a snapshot of what, to use Mr. Banningham's words, what Plan B looks like in terms of the greatest potential at the moment. Now, aligned with that is some work that we've done, which is in some of the slides in front of you, to explore if we are faced with a situation where, which we hope we won't be, but if we are faced with a situation where HOAC do need to make a transition whilst we are beginning to do work on their existing site, how far we can seek to maintain at least some of their activities on that site during that period. And Mr. Smart can tell you about that if you would like to hear about that now, or I'm entirely in your hands, really, but the slides are in the pack. What we're not doing, and I want to make this absolutely clear, what we're not doing today is we're not saying that the committee should say that HOAC can remain permanently at Harefield number 2. As things stand, our focus is on looking to continue with the relocation initiative, and I've just explained our thinking on that.
Can I just say that the meeting that you're referring to, and the minutes must have come from a different meeting, because it was categorically stated, as I have said, and as the Hillingdon Borough Solicitor who was at the meeting stated yesterday, or Monday I think it was, the 3 options were gone through and they were ruled out. We were offered one option, which was staying on site while they
ruled out by whom?
By HS2, by Martin Wells.
Well, if that is what was said at the meeting, or what your understanding of what was said at the meeting, what was said at the meeting, and we're now hearing something different, there's no point in going back to what was said at the meeting. We ought to listen to what's been said now, shouldn't we?
Yeah, but if I can quote an email from Nick Hurd, who also spoke to HS2 on 2nd of June, HS2 have written off the Denham Quarry option unless Jeff compromises on the size of the lake. My fear is that HS2 are just playing games if they're going to build a...
Let's just assume that they're speaking to us and they don't play games with us.
They do with us.
We've heard that. Can we, and if we're beginning to hear something that is in your ears different, can I suggest we actually hear it? Because what they say here on record, there's no dispute about what they say, and going to be probably, hopefully, more positive and hopefully more helpful.
And you put on the record your concern about the size of the lake, which you think, and shape. I think probably shape rather more than size in terms of actual sailing.
The early work that HS2 did was quite good, and we actually came to an agreement as to which one to go ahead with. But HS2 came back and said, that's not possible. It suddenly becomes possible. No.
Well, that's what we're trying to achieve, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think that every time something is said which may have been different from what has been said before, that should be a plus, not a reason to come back and say, but you said. It's a,
I agree. Let's move forward. But
what I'm describing to you today is the prospects that we see at this moment in time, and I'm here acting on behalf of the promoter. So I think that what I'm trying to open up is a further discussion around the discussion that you've had with Bucks. That's opened up a different prospect for Denham. I appreciate the timing, and we understand that timing is absolutely crucial, and we can all agree that. We will come back with a plan to say this is how we think we can get on with it in the next few weeks, and let's see how far we can get with it.
Can you include in that plan the size of the lake that you're projecting? Well, because that's the crucial factor. That last time it failed, you came back and said, no, we can't build that size lake, and the email from HS2, unless you compromise on the size of the lake, which is basically accept what's going to be there anyway.
I will say to you here that we will look at getting or trying to maximise the lake size on this site. I don't know, I literally don't know what the prospect is on that site.
We've got your plans you did last time.
Well, we will look to see how that could be maximised. It's not our land. So we need to work out what that's going to be.
These are the practical plans that were done last time, and it is possible to build a lake, but it's going to cost money because there's a backfill that we have to take into account.
Let us work out our plan, and let us think about what that looks like with the owners of the site and what they may be prepared to go to by way of a further consent, and whether that is attractive to them. I don't know the answer here today. Yes, there's a lot to do, but if we can work that out, we can come back to you. I'm not going to say here today that we could provide it like for like. There may have to be a compromise, and I'm sorry about that. The site isn't straightforward, as you and I can agree, but let's have a look at it and see how far we can get.
I mean, obviously we have to go along with what you're saying, but the work was done. HS2 contractors, I've got the maps here, for the lakes that were possible to be done. HS2 went away to do it.
Yeah.
And the pressure is on, Mr. Creek. We all appreciate the issue. I don't think we can get very much farther, can we, Mr. Mould?
No, there was just one other thing I was going to say, because conscious as I am that what Mr. Creek has just said and the exchange he had with Sir Peter, let me just read onto the record what is on the screen in front of you, which I hope will make absolutely clear the promoter's position today. This is the last paragraph of the letter of the 12th of June 2015 sent by HS2 Limited to the leader of Buckinghamshire County Council in response to his letter of the 1st of June. And it says, we, HS2 Limited, welcome the view set out in your recent letter that you consider that opportunities still exist in relation to the Denham Quarry site. We, HS2 Limited, would be keen to discuss such opportunities with you in conjunction with HOAC and other relevant stakeholders. We would be interested in particular to discuss how you consider the constraints previously identified can be resolved to reach a practical solution acceptable to all parties. That is the public position of the promoter as at the 17th of June 2015, whatever may have been said in the past.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I can help you a little bit through Mr. Miller on the alternative alignment point that was raised, but I can deal with that very quickly indeed, if you like, by just saying that a number of alternative alignments through the Colne Valley were considered. They're recorded in a summary of the consideration of those options is set out in Volume 7 of the in the CFA Report 7, Volume 2 of the Environmental Statement, and it indicates that the alignment that you have in the bill in front of you is the one which, on balance, works best in terms of its operational qualities and the degree to which that is balanced with the impacts on, amongst others, recreational facilities within the valley. If you want further commentary on that, we can give it, but that's a matter for you.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions of Mr. Miller at this time? You've sort of made your views quite clear anyway already.
Yeah, the size of the lake, I'll just leave it with that.
Okay. All right. The Member of Parliament is before us on the 8th of July. I want to report back before he speaks to the committee, please, on progress.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, June. Sorry, it's June. It's going to be very quick. 20th, next week? 30th of June.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll look to at least set up the programme going forward that you asked me to do. Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just ask one question, which is a very neutral question? Charities have provisions of what happens if the charity winds up. What does your trustee say happens to the assets if you stop?
There's a whole part that has to be diverted towards similar charitable objectives.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Creek. Thank you. Thank you, James. Have you had a day off school?
Yeah.
Was it worth it or not? No, you did very well. I could hear everything you said.
I think he's enjoyed the experience.
Did he?
Yeah, the good around.
Good luck in Weymouth as well.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next petitioner.
Thank you very much.
Hillingdon Rowing Club.
I've prepared this by drinking about a gallon of coffee. So if I start floating around the room,
Okay.
Don't be alarmed. Right, okay. Well, thanks very much for.
Okay. You're near to Howie, aren't you? Is that right?
Pardon?
Where? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Right, okay. A presentation on the club. If you go to the next slide, please. Just gives you an idea of what sport we're talking about here. That picture in the little corner is actually our first ever rowing on the lake. That was on the first day, on August 4th, 2012. The other one is just a general idea of how it looks like. That's one of our pontoons there. We go to the next slide, please. this club really is an example of the Olympic legacy. We started on the 4th of August 2012, which is the last day of the Olympic regatta at Dorney Reach. I've been trying to set up a rowing club for a long time now. It actually happened because of the Olympics. It was a surge of interest in the Olympics, so we're not just saying Olympic legacy to tick a box. This is an Olympic legacy club. If it wasn't for the 2012 Olympics, we wouldn't exist. It's an interest generated by that. We've got strong support from British Rowing. We've currently got about 70 members, most are active. We have a junior section of about 30 people. We've got ages from 14 up to 70. We have, there's some more details on membership later. We're about to start a project to start attracting retired people into the club, because there's a retirement village just up the road from us. And we see them as being a valuable part of the sport, so they can bring in time and skills to help the club function. Also adds to the community cohesion, which we're very proud of. We have 23 boats we built up from, we started off with one, which is in that picture back there. We used to have one four-man boat, Cox 4. We used to have 40 people turning up per session. That was a bit problematic. We've got 23 boats now. We used to have a huge bums and seats problem trying to get enough seats for everyone, but now we've overcome that. We have some of them are new from grant funding, which I'll go into later. Yes, we do recreational to competitive rowing. So some people just want to come down and row the odd week to just fitness purposes. Some people want to go to the full competitive level. We have land training, which I'll come into later. It's attracted significant investment in equipment and attention from the rowing community. Turn to the next page. One thing we've done, we're very proud of, we've been working with local schools. Developed a school club, and we've been working with Hayden School in Eastcote, which is a state school, big state secondary school, and introduced both indoor and water rowing. And now we have an arrangement with them. We use their gym facilities. They have 12 rowing machines, which is a fantastic setup. Most private schools would be jealous of that. So we're setting up a satellite club there, which we've applied for satellite club funding to run our club there. They start off doing indoor rowing, and since the spring they've been rowing down at Howick using our boats. And we've been running a Learn to Row course using an SCT coach. SCT is Stewards Charitable Trust. Henley is the main rowing event in the country, makes some money. They plough money back into sports by supplying coaches. Clubs are selected by British Rowing for the coaches. And charitable. Stewards Charitable Trust. If I get fast and fast, just let me to slow down. It's probably the coffee. They've had 50 pupils that come through the Learn to Row courses. That's on a voluntary basis. They've also introduced indoor rowing as part of curriculum activities. Part of your gym stuff you do at the school now involves the indoor rowing. It's going very, very well. Hayden hosted an indoor rowing competition a month or so back, which our SCT coach was organised for them, and attracted two other local schools, Viners from Uxbridge and Queensmead and South Ruislip. Both were very, very enthused by the whole event, and now Viners wants to introduce the same arrangement that Hayden has to introduce rowing to their school. And also, there's also two other schools which actually row through with Howick, because Howick do Learn to Row stuff as well. One state school and a private school. And we're very, very pleased with this. And also, we have interest in Watford Boys Grammar School, although that's still at a very, very early stage. So we see this as being something for the future. We think there's a huge latent interest in local schools, both public and state schools. And we aim to sort of continue that into the future and build that up. Next slide, please. What we're very, very pleased about, we started up a club in this region. There's no other clubs in the region. The nearest ones are on the Thames, or at Bedford, or over on the River Lee. We have, so we are the club in the area. If you live in the North West London area, you come to us, or you have to travel a long way to an existing club. What's pleasing is that all our members, apart from a handful, have come to the sport through Howick or through us. We're not just picking up members of other clubs and moving them around. This is new people to the sport. We have and the junior. We have a huge junior section. It's kind of about 30 juniors at the moment. That has a turnover every year as they go off to university. So there's probably been about 70 or 80 juniors come through the club overall. Most of them tend to be fairly sporty. There's some who don't do any other sports, but with the seniors, we have a wide range there. We have a lot of seniors who rowed at university and have then stopped rowing because there's nothing in the area. They found out there's a club here and they picked up again after 10 to 20 year break. It's very pleasing. So we have quite a lot of sort of middle-aged sort of people in the club. Junior memberships, all backgrounds, stays from private school. We also send teams to London Youth Games every year, which is very, very popular. We've been doing that for a couple of years now. In fact, since 2013 was 2 years. We're on the Hillingdon club's cruise, but I know Howie run the Harrow and Ealing, I think. Senior membership are people of all ages and backgrounds, which again is pleasing because rowing is seen as quite a sort of niche sport with a certain type of person. We have all sorts of people in our club. We've got from builders up to professor neurology at UCL. On Saturday we had a social evening out in a restaurant in Watford, and I was watching an Irish labourer who works in the building sites in London bantering with a doctor who's a biology teacher in a big public school. So that's a sort of, it's pleased that we have, where else would you get sort of people that sort of background mixing together? It works very, very well. It's a very social club. People who tell me how friendly it is, and they enjoy coming here. And it's fantastic. We've got such a wide range of people in it. On the competitive side, we had a first regatta's entry was in June 2013 at Weybridge, and since then we've sent 107 crews to 29 competitions. Both regattas which you have in the summer, which are straight sort of tournament type things over 1,000 metres, and head races which are processional races which are over longer distances. We've had one regatta win so far and a head race win so far, and seeing as these are people who we've trained up from scratch, we're very, very pleased with that, so that's quite a result. We're also finding that first year our crews, they were doing well, but they weren't keeping up the other crews. Last year they were getting nearer and nearer. This year we've had a few people getting through rounds, so it's every year it's creeping forward and forward. We're really building on the competitive side. On the junior side with the SCT coach, which we've had for 4 years now, because there was two years with a coach who started up at Howie and then worked with us and we started up, and now we have another coach on a 2-year programme. We're 1 year into that. She's fantastic. She coaches the juniors. The juniors are very, very high standard, and also we have the juniors they come back every week because the coaching is very, very good. The training they get is very good. They're committed. British Rowing. I'll be calling on witness Anna-Marie Phelps, who's the chairman of British Rowing, to say a few words at the end. But they identify the region as having potential for the sports, again, because it's a heavily populated region, there's no clubs in the area. We are the club, and so the potential for this is fantastic. We had these projects with the schools. We're going to start this project with the retired people. The potential of this is very, very good. Also found that I've been doing this for a long time now, but recently, interest in rowing has generated mainly, the Olympics was a big one that started us off. It's also because rowing does very well at a national level. We're one of the countries to beat, and that has a big effect. And also another effect is now there's rowing machines in most gyms, so people come along and they've seen rowing and they want to try it on the water, and so it's getting a more popular sport. It's coming out of a sort of niche. When I started rowing at university hundreds of years ago, it was quite a sort of niche thing, but now it's getting more and more popular, and we are capitalising on that, and we are bringing that to the North West London region. British Rowing started off the Learn to Row package which Howick run. First of all, they were run by the SCT coach, but then Howick trained up some of their staff and they run them very successfully, and which works very well for us because it means that Howick every few months we get 10 or 12 juniors coming out the back end of these courses, and they're very high standard. It means that we don't have to train them. It also means they get a very, very good level of instruction from Howick, and we were picking up juniors all the time. When they come through, they're very keen. and we take them, then they come to us and we go on to the competitive level. Howick is one of 20 sites of British Rowing's rowability programme, which is adaptive rowing. That's rowing for disabled people. They had a adaptive sports open day the other month, which was very well attended. And they have lots of adaptive sailing going on. That's every Saturday. When we finish rowing on Saturday mornings, that's the adaptive sailing starts, and it's very popular. And British Rowing is supported as the Hillingdon Rowing Club as a community club. So next one, please. We are Olympic Legacy Club. It's any break in our existence will kill that off. That's why we're keen to keep the club going, to keep that interest in Olympic Legacy going. I noticed from articles in the press that the Olympic Legacy isn't going that well generally in the country, with 400,000 people giving up sport since the Olympics. We're doing our bit to stop that, reverse that quite successfully. And we think if we can continue to exist and we can improve the things we have, we think the potential of this is very, very good. And I can see, given the right facilities, the right stuff, that we could have a regional rowing centre here. It would work very, very well. It's a growing sport. So there's nearest clubs are down the Thames. We've got a wide area market to promote in. We're interested in being a community club. We're not interested in just being purely recreational or purely competitive. We want to be the whole thing. We want everyone involved at whatever level. We're happy for people to just turn up on the odd occasion to row, and we want people down who want to do the serious training every week and the land training. Also, I know the London Borough of Hillingdon, in the Public Health England stats issued in February last year, and at London Borough of Hillingdon, the most obese borough in London, with 67.2% of adults being either overweight or obese. Very well, and you'll be aware of articles in the press and what have you that this is becoming a big problem for the country. People are getting unfit. It's going to affect their quality of life. It's going to affect their health. It could tip over the NHS unless this is addressed. And I think surely the number one priority now must be provision of facilities of physical recreation. So there must be a good reason why, if there's something as successful as this, why this has to be stopped. Or surely we must now be promoting this sort of activity. And if you give us the means to carry on, we will do our best to promote this, to build this up, and we think it will. It'll be very successful. Got a picture here. This top picture is we have social regattas. We're having one actually on Saturday. These are using the boats I was talking to you about that British Rowing supply to Howick for the Learn to Row courses. There's two of them there. These are good days because they bring in parents. The juniors bring their parents along. Some of them have a go. We had a stall at Denham Fair the other week, and we had a lot of interest from people saying they'd rowed at university and they want to come hang to the sport. So one of the reasons we're having a regatta on Saturday is they need to come down to be introduced to the sport. And if they're brave enough, they can have a go. If not, we'll take them out in one of the training boats and just give them some brush-up lessons. We're hoping to pick up possibly up to 20 new members from that. We found from Denham that people are coming up to us and saying, we never knew there was a rowing club in this area, and we'd love to come back into the sport. So we've been a bit... we do advertise the club through our website, and most of the new interest comes through the website, but we haven't advertised it too much because of constraints on the doubt caused by HS2, so we don't want to sort of go for it and then find we've got to stop in a couple of years' time. But once we're secure, then we can really go for that, get some more publicity out there, and then get new members turning up. Bottom one just shows you a 4-man boat. We have 7 of those. We can't have anything bigger because of the size of the lake, but they're very popular. We'll turn over to the next one. We use the lake at Howick. We've developed a strong base of training rowers and for teaching beginners. Howick offers a course of about 600 and 700 metres, which is a bare minimum for rowing. And if you're going to regattas where you're rowing 1,000 metres, anything under 700, 650 metres, it's starting to really It's like training. It's doing a football club on a pitch 2,000 normal size. And you can do basics, sort of like technique skills, but for the distance stuff, you're struggling a bit. We get our lake allows you to go around the outside, so we can do distance stuff. The head racers doing that, but for regattas you need to go down a straight line, so anything that sort of curtails that is going to be very problematic for us.
2.5 minutes doesn't really get you going for
Well, it's
3.5
difficult. So I actually went to my first regatta in 30 odd years on Saturday at Marlow, and it's a 1,000 metre course, and because we've been training on 700 metres, we had to trust to luck for the last 300 metres. But we're ambitious. We want the club, we want the rowing to get established in this region where it hasn't been before. And to get that, we need good facilities. We need something that's going to we can train people sensibly on. Anything under 700, 650 metres, it's starting to struggle. Even without really pushing the club, we're getting about 5 to 10 people a month coming through. On our website, you can, if you're interested, you can go in. If anyone wants to take it up, then do this. Go onto our website. You can put in your name and your email address, and it fires off an email to our club mailbox, and then we respond back, and they come along and have a go. And if they're interested, they take it up, and we find that we're getting quite a steady stream of new people coming in. So we've had one regatta win, one head race win. So far we've attracted 57k in grant funding. Some's for equipment, some's for training, some's for funding stuff we do at Howick. From that we've bought 3 new boats.
They all have Greek names.
What? Oh, that's not right. Yes, we had the naming ceremony down in September. They have names starting with H. So you had to ask people to submit. Well, some are quite rude, so we had to use that. But we had Hercules, Hermes, and the other ones were the Howick adaptive boats. Yeah, that was very successful. We have one of the grants we bought 5 second-hand boats. We've refurbished 3 to very high standards. So they're in effect new boats, and we've bought some new blades. We're getting to the stage now where we need to get away from buying second-hand boats and start buying new ones, because the competitive people, we're going to regattas, we want them to have the good stuff. We want people in this region to have proper stuff when they go to race, not be racing in second-rate stuff. So. And again, we've had the SCT coach. We actually have one for 4 years. The present one's for 2 years. We're 1 year into that programme, and before that we had one for 2 years, which we started with Howick and then came rowed with us. Our future, we think the club will cease to exist after April 2017, which is the date we've been told is when HS2 take over the site. Therefore, we're faced with 3 scenarios: full closure, a tunnel under Howick, or relocation. We want to continue operation. If you build a tunnel, excellent. If you relocate to somewhere that works, that's an option. But closure, if the club closes down, there's nothing in this region. If you want to row, you've got to go onto the Thames or up to Bedford or over to the Lee Valley. It will knock out, the more committed competitive rowers may do that, but it will knock out all your junior rowing. That might be feasible. It will knock out the recreational rowing. It will knock out the people the middle-aged people who used to row at university, like picking up again, or just fancy having a go. They won't do it because it's too far away. There'll be no more local people going to regattas. We really, really want this to continue. We've worked very hard on this. We're all volunteers. There's no paid officials in our club. People put in a hell of a lot of work, and I really, really don't want this to close down. I think potential is very, very good, and if we can work together to make this happen from when the railway starts, excellent. That's what we want. Relocation. We've taken our cue from what's happened to Howick, because that what we were told to do by HS2 is go with Howick and then up where they end up. On the relocation, we've been told we can't go to certain sites because of nature conservation. We think that's a bit of a missed opportunity there. We would like to see sport and conservation exist side by side. It does on other sites. Every year we have a training camp down in Wimbledon in the Exeter National Park. It's not a triple site, it's a local nature reserve, but activities there, which is basically a Howick operation. It's on the bigger lake that Howick have got, but it's a do the same things that Howick do, and that exists quite happily with a nature conservation interest. And we think that's a strategic approach we've taken to what's in the Cone Valley. Rather like what happens in the Lee Valley, over in the north east London, you have the Lee Valley Regional Park, which has a statutory body, and that's organised with strategic thinking and vision. We'd like to see that in the Cone Valley. So make sure everyone's interests are catered for. Last page. This is actually, you asked about Wimbleball, our yearly training training camp. This is actually Wimbleball this year. The top picture shows all the people who went. You get a fair idea of the sort of we've got in the club. Wimbleball down here, it's near, it's down in Somerset, on the other side of Taunton. You can tell from this picture, all the big ones are the juniors and the small ones are the seniors. I'm not sure why that is. You can't tell from this picture, but the weather was awful that day. So we had to do lots of indoor rowing, which you see down in the corner. You see here the sort of, people, it's a training camp, it's a weekend away, charge about 140 quid, which is very, very good value, but it's very popular. And these people, I'm looking at these people here, apart from me, standing in one corner, and our New Zealand coach. None of these people have rowed before they started at either Howick. The juniors would come through Howick, and the seniors would come through the club. So they're all people new to the sport apart from two. And there's a broad mix there of seniors, juniors. I think the youngest juniors are sort of 15, 16, right up to some guy who's 60. And then again, just picture the bottom of the juniors going out one of the fours. So that's my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Okay. Anna Maria, are you going to say anything, or are you just sitting? You're going to.
I'm happy to give you a bit of broader context, if you like, about British rowing and us as a governing body, and our involvement with both Hillingdon and Howick at this point. We have been trying for many years to identify a suitable body of water in this part of London. Basically, there's a triangle between the A1M and the A40 where there is no access to water. I should perhaps declare an interest. I was born in Brent and brought up in Watford, and I didn't discover rowing until I was 19 and at university. So this is absolutely my growing up area. What we have found with Howick, we tried for a long time to develop rowing on the Welsh Harp, but that became very difficult from about 2010. In 2010-2011, we identified Howick and invested quite a bit of resource into boats for them and training coaches for them to be able to deliver learn to row courses. We were really aware that 2012 as a home games would have an even bigger impact on the interest in sport in general and rowing in particular, and the impact was immediate in terms of interest and exponentially off the scale of what we'd imagined in terms of people trying to find local clubs. So having places like Howick who we could signpost people to experience the sport was really important. And I think, as they've said, they've put something like 700 people through their Learn to Row courses, which are British rowing courses for us, which is amazing. What we need at the end of that, not just for the adults who do Learn to Row, is an exit route and somewhere for them to maintain their sporting interest. Because from the economy and the sort of the country's perspective, we don't want people just to try a sport and give it up. We want them to be sustainable, and we want them to keep their activity. So we work closely with Sport England to try and develop the sorts of programmes that will give people an introduction on a no-commitment basis, which Howick does, and then an exit route, which is what Hillingdon Rowing Club does, and it's proved extremely successful. It really is, as John has said, a fantastic community club. It provides a unique facility, I think unique in almost all of London, actually. The Docklands has a still water, bit of water, but there are very, very few other places where this sort of rowing activity can take place safely for juniors and for disabled people and for seniors to go to. The fact that it's local to this area and there's no other facility means that it does attract people with disabilities from the local area who can come back, who are reliant on carers to bring them, who were not going to travel across London. It's also very, very good for women, for older women who are learning to row. again, who we know from our insight will not travel across London. They need to be local, and this is one of our target areas within sport and Sport England, as you'll know from This Girl Can, to get these women of a certain age, I should say, being one of them I can say that, into sport in a sustainable way. You will all know the benefits, the health and educational benefits of sport, and particularly of rowing, but I think that for the local young people's population of Hillingdon, this provides a real opportunity to do a different sport. Rowing, particularly for those children who are not necessarily as well coordinated, who don't like ball sports, who don't like running around, who are perhaps larger children. A sitting down sport where you can get fit is fantastic. It also gives them real opportunities educationally to go on. We've seen from Mosbourne Academy the opportunities in East London for children out of some fairly failing state schools to apply for and achieve some great university degrees and opportunities for scholarships in American universities through rowing. So I think this is a potential outlet for the young people of the community. It also provides an excellent, on a much more local scale, pathway for these young people. And the London Youth Games and the fact that Hillingdon and Howick sent 4 crews to the London Youth Games, all of whom made the final in the local games in such a short space of time is a great achievement. I think that's probably in terms of context all I'd like to say. We're hugely supportive of both programmes. We have worked with and invested lots of time, and we continue to support them through our Henley Stewards Charitable Trust coaches and our Rowability, our disability programme, as well as through the Sport England Inclusion Programme for their disability programme. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Quite nice to add into that. That's excellent. But it's not just people in Hillingdon. It covers South West Herts, South East Bucks, all of North East London, apart from other boroughs, Hillingdon. Harrow, Barnet live there. That's our club. We have members who live in Hemel Hempstead, the Chalfonts. One used to live in High Wycombe, but he's moved a bit further in, down to Ealing in London. So we do have membership. We do cover a wide area. We have members from a wide area. They're not just all from Hillingdon. We have we'd have a huge catchment area, and right across the board, we've got memberships coming in. So, so we are the club for quite a big region.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neal.
It's irrelevant. Well, they're relevant, but not to this. Congratulations on what you created.
Yes, thank you.
And I think that for British Rowing to have identified the need and to work with you is really impressive. My wife in 1996 went out to Atlanta to watch you and others row and perform. And my bundle of redundant information is that your college was where Mervyn King, the Governor of the Bank of England, won his rudder for taking the fellows 8 to their oars.
Mr. Mole, have you ever rowed?
Have I ever rowed?
Yes.
I have, actually, but as my near neighbour, Anna Marie Phelps, knows, I have not rowed at anything like the standard that she has. So, I was going to say the temptation to cross-examine my near neighbour is almost irresistible. But I'm tempered by the knowledge that if there's anything that she doesn't know about rowing, it's not worth knowing.
Well, I think she said it all, actually.
But no, can I just... I mean, clearly, this is although relatively youthful, this is a club that needs to be supported, and not least because, as Mr. Neal said, the Olympic legacy is under some challenge at the moment, and this project should not be contributing to pressures. It should be looking to relieve them as far as it can. Now, this is a club that does, I think, as you've heard, have a fairly close functional relationship with Howick in its broader sense. And it seems to me that the right way forward may be to continue to see the club as part of the Howick family, if you like. And one of the things you'll recall from the restoration plan that we showed you for Denham Quarry was there's that lake that eastern lake. Yeah. Which on plans certainly looks like it has some prospect of being quite a decent road. Now it's about 700 metres in length, and as you'll recall from, we can just put it up actually, it's P6328. you'll recall as we put it up that the opportunities to increase its length are rather limited because it's constrained by what lies beyond its northern and southern boundaries. But I think 700 metres broadly approximates to what's available to the club at the moment. I bear in mind what you've been told, that that's not the ideal, but it's what's available. And so I would suggest that, certainly for moving forward from now and in the immediate future, we should see the club as being part and parcel of the arrangements we discussed a few moments ago with Howie. We will.
Progress report in a few weeks' time, then we will also know where we are with the Rome club.
Yes. It's also just worth mentioning, reminding the committee again that, and please don't intend this to be misunderstood, I think that this is the way forward for the time being. But so far as Harefield No. 2 Lake is concerned, it will return as a recreational resource, at least in principle, once the railway has been constructed. And so, if one thinks more broadly about other recreational interests there might be in that lake, it's not to be underestimated. But as I say, I think here this is part of the Howie family, and we should work with them on that basis. Yeah.
It's easier to move a rowing club than it is to move an activity centre, I think.
Yeah.
The other question is, at some stage, presumably, British Rowing will want to get to a 1,000-metre course. And you're Eton with 2,000, or
Well, there is a 2,000-metre Olympic standard course at Dorney. It belongs to Eton College. It's not a publicly owned lake, and therefore access to it is limited and severely limited during school time. So during the school term. So it's a whole other matter how we deal with major events in our sport. We don't have an international standard lake in England for our sport that we can access. But 1,000-metre lakes would be infinitely usable for more than just a Hillingdon rowing club. They would become a centre for other clubs to be able to use, because still water to train on is immensely valuable compared to the rivers. We do have a limit that I think there are 43,000, you may know, 43,000 miles of waterway in England, of which only just under 3,000 are accessible and navigable by rowing boats. So only 6.5% of the waterways in England are navigable to us. So the more that we can access and the more quality water we can access, the better for the sport.
Okay. Final comments, Mr. Neil?
Can I just make one more
yes,
point,
please.
because it just if there's any misunderstanding. Like, reference was made to Broadwater Lake, I think. I think Broadwater Lake is not really is not a good prospect for intensifying the water-based activities that go on there, for reasons that you know about. And that is that since I think the mid-80s, when that lake, or the late 80s, when that lake was designated as a site of special scientific interest, there has been an exclusion zone in the southern half of the lake, which has meant that water-based activities are confined to the north, for the obvious reason that Natural England and others wish to see those ecological benefits and qualities protected. And the amount of water that's available outside the exclusion zone at Broadwater is actually only of the order of about 400 metres, so it's not really a sensible option.
And Natural England won't send their gadwalls and shovelers to some other lake?
I think they feel that even if they tried to, the gadwalls and shovelers wouldn't go. There's a functional interaction, to use a kind of jargon phrase, between Broadwater Lake and the internationally designated Southwest London water bodies, which means that the Broadwater Lake is actually rather an important facility for ecological purposes.
Okay. Brief final comment, Mr. Neil?
Yeah, okay. We were interested in this lake because Howie were going to go there, and we were following Howie and their lead, and Jeff was showing us those plans which he showed here today, and then the whole thing seemed to die a death a couple of months ago, so we thought it was off the table. we received a letter dated 9th of June saying that this HS2 considered this possibility, which didn't give us a lot of time to look into it, but we did go back to the County Council who own it, and they told us that I've got it here, yeah. My instructions are that some leases have already started to backfill the lakes, which I understand require reconfiguration. So we're not clear what's happening on that side, whether this lake's included, because looking at the Google satellite images, the back at the bottom end seems to be unavailable. I don't know whether that's because these things aren't dated, but if that's...
I'm told the Google images are old, right. and that lake is the lake which the cursor is over at the moment is going in as you were saying there. Indeed, my understanding is that it essentially exists already.
Yeah. Okay. And you'll understand the report's going to come back to the committee on this, and that will cover things like access, because we will need access, car parking, toilet facilities, somewhere secure to keep boats, this sort of stuff. Really is a basic minimum.
We can rely on you to make sure that HS2 know what your minimum requirements are, and you can expect them to tell us in a couple of weeks' time what the situation is.
Okay. And also, the letter on 9th of June said that it was considered we could be able to use Howick while construction is going on. We don't see that. Looking through your plans, we're a bit dubious as to that.
We've given assurance that we won't take possession of Howick until March 2017. As I said to the committee a few moments ago, we're looking to try and extend that by a further year. I'm going to report back to the committee, I hope, before the end of this week on that. We'll let you know, of course, at the same time if we're able to extend it by that further year.
Yeah. Clearly, we all understand the difficulty of keeping you in business until there's an alternative and everything else. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much for your time. Thank you.
Mrs. Phelps. Right. We now move on to the next petitioner, which is Doreen McIntyre on behalf of Arthur Daily Trips. Team back from Hillingdon. All right. Doreen, do you want to kick off?
I will, thank you. I would say it's good to be back, but that seemed a pleasantry that was a little inappropriate at the moment. Here today we're representing a business called Arthur Daily Trips. I'm acting as Roby agent for the petitioners Sarah Green and Josie Asher, who are the partners who own that business. And Karen Newbold, who you'll remember from before, is here as a witness to talk about the technical aspects of boating that affect the business. The picture you can see in front of you at the moment is in fact Arthur, the boat that is the focus of the business. Sarah and Josie are partners in that business, following the tradition of what's known as number ones, which was owner-operators of a single narrow boat. They've been connected with the canal business, with the canal itself, for about 9 years, and they built up this passenger boat business over the last 4 years. The business is actually based entirely on the landscape and the heritage of the canal on which it operates. That's the whole point of Arthur's Daily Trips, which we'll go on to explain in a bit more detail in a minute or two. But basically it's vested in the canal itself and in Sarah and Josie's incredible deep specialist knowledge of the canal and the heritage and the environment round about it that they share with their passengers. what they're aiming to do with this business really is to facilitate close contact with nature, with wildlife in this area, being strong believers in the concept of well-being through wildlife. And obviously Hoak told you a lot more about that interaction between the environment and well-being in the context of children earlier on today. So as part of a long tradition of pleasure boats on the canal, it still operates in very much a pre-car way. Typically passengers get met at Uxbridge Station and walked slowly out of the urban area down to the canal where the boat is moored in the old-fashioned and environmentally friendly way. So Arthur Daily Trips is very much part of the eco-tourism industry, which protects the environment, makes a living from the environment, but in doing that aims to care and enhance it. So the business is now attracting customers from all over the world, clearly a lot of local ones from the London area and surroundings, lots of repeat visits from people who have it as an old favourite. But if you take a look on TripAdvisor, for example, you'll see tributes from customers come from as far away as USA, appreciating the glimpse they're getting into a world that's very few realise is actually on the doorstep of a huge metropolis. In fact, it's mostly within the London boundaries. So it's just one of the many small businesses in the area that are either canal related, either by nature of the business themselves or by choice. And in fact, Aaron and I ourselves, many of our friends and neighbours are other small businesses like that contribute to the local economy. And you heard earlier this week from Hillingdon Council about the socio-economic impacts in the area. Arthur's Daily Trips, along with us, are the types of business that we feel tend to get overlooked, being small, sole trader type enterprises in those kind of analysis, and we'd like a bit more attention to them. So the petition points itself that we're bringing, they address the main ways in which HS2 is going to impact the business of Arthur's Daily Trips, particularly during construction, but obviously to some extent beyond that phase as well. We will, reluctantly and with some difficulty, try and concentrate on those direct impacts and not stray into the wider environmental impacts that you've heard about before. The viaduct noise and visual impact are the ones that scream out at us, and it's going to be hard to resist talking about them, but we will. But we would ask it to be noted that the petitioners do fully support the issues that have been raised by others, like the Colne Valley Park last week, Harefield Marina, the Harefield Boaters and the Harefield Traders that you heard about in March, and particularly that Boaters petition talked very eloquently about the noise and visual impacts, and if you cast your mind back to some of those lovely images and videos that you heard then, that will do the job. We feel that the importance of the canal and the towpath has really been very much underestimated in the environmental statement itself. It is a transport route for many local commuters, apart from anything else, including ourselves, either getting to work in Uxbridge and beyond, or people travelling along there, cycling, walking, into Harefield and to Denham for work there. You'll remember Widewater Basins Park when we visited Harefield earlier in the year. Lots of commuters come into Harefield that way in the morning as Harefield's commuters are leaving on their bicycles along the towpath. But anyway, let's set the scene a bit more, get into the world of Arthur's Daily Tours. Could we have slide 184, please? So this is the way Arthur sees the world in the context of the construction works. As you can see, the red line running up the middle is the canal towpath running alongside the canal itself. It runs from roughly down just beyond Denham Deep Lock down here, and journeys up and down the canal in that area, under the Chiltern line as it is at the moment, under where HS2 is going to go, along through Harefield, as far as Blackjack's Lock and that area around there. So basically it's the epicentre of HS2 is the epicentre of Arthur's daily business as well. If we could have 1087, please. Just to get into a bit more detail, give you a sense of what Arthur does. This homes in on the actual trips, the various things that are offered. various destinations that Arthur heads for in the course of its trips. Typically 2 or 3 trips a week, largely in the summer months, but it does operate all year round. And when it's not offering tourist trips or private hire type things for things like birthday celebrations, it also offers facilities to corporate hirers, sometimes used for away day, workshops, planning sessions, things like that, taking advantage of the peace and quiet to get the brain cells moving. So basically, just to focus on the area, typically Arthur might float along the canal a little bit, go through a very interesting lock at Denham Deep Lock there, maybe take a picnic stop around here, looking into the Triple SI, around the lakes and the woodlands, moor along in between the current Chiltern line on the way to Harefield for a stop. Widewater Lock is quite a popular place to stop, mooring along there, getting out at Harefield Marina, which you're familiar with, for a quick stretch of the legs up to the fish and chip shop at the top of Moor Hall Road, or a pint at the pub, which you'll be glad to know is now completely refurbished and reopened for use on the canal side. It was derelict and under construction, I think, when you were there, but it's in full operation now. So a pub stop is a popular one, fish and chip cruise, or continuing along to what they call the cruise to a view. And no presentation on this area is complete without a reference to the view from Old Orchard, so I'll make it now. That is the view that Arthur would take its passengers along there for, to get out, walk up the hill, enjoy the view, and back down again. So that really is the world of Arthur's daily tours. And I should have said their catchphrase is definitely not dodgy. So as you can see from there, it's a really...
Have you done the fish and chip cruise?
Have I done the fish and chip cruise? I don't need to, as I live at the foot of the road and I can get them for my tea any day I want. So that's the world of the trips. The last little picture I want to show you, 1086, please. We're showing you this one really just to emphasise the point that this is very much an unchanged type of business. The environmental statement for HS2 leads us to believe that the environment around here has changed a lot in the 20th century because of quarrying and digging out the lake system. But in fact, this area is and always has been very much a wetland landscape with rivers and tributaries feeding and leaving the canal right since it was built in 1795. The lock at Denham is one of 2 that raise the canal over the River Fraze. That was important as a millstream for the Uxbridge area at the time. All the boats were originally horse-drawn, and boaters have been looking after this area for those 200 years. So the top picture there was taken in 1910. It looks exactly the same as that now. Nothing has changed there. The one underneath is 1987. Similar types of change of use of a boat. At that time, that was a working boat, a cargo boat, but the storage area was covered over and it carried passengers too. So Arthur is very much in that tradition. So there you go, that's what Arthur is all about. That's a glimpse into its world. Let's focus now on what the actual petitioning areas are. We're going to talk about 2 sets of issues really. The first set relates to various aspects of the closure of the Grand Union Canal towpath itself. And we feel that's got several impacts. We feel it poses a threat to the health and safety of passengers during journey operations. It clearly is going to limit the number of suitable passenger journey destination sites that stop along the way, and is going to diminish the passenger experience during journey operations. So that's issues about the closure of the towpath. And the duration and the timing of these closures are really of quite significant impact in that respect, and it's something we might be able to work on. The second set of issues arises from the nature of the construction activity that's going to be taking place along the canal itself, and we feel that poses a threat to the integrity of the towpath and the canal structure. We're also worried about impacts on the water levels on the canal itself, which will affect the navigability of the canal, and that's what Karen's going to talk about. So let's get straight into them first then. look at the issues related to the towpath closure, and I'm going to ask Karen to explain why that's so important, why it matters to have plenty of mooring options on the towpath along the way.
Okay, thank you. Can we have 108, please? Okay. So, Arthur, first of all, I think it's important to understand the distinction between the importance of the towpath as a facility for walkers, which can be met by a large extent by diverted footpaths. The towpath is something that serves specific, more complex needs of boaters. When boaters moor up, it's because they need to get off their boats. If the towpath is closed, they can't get off their boats, so the mooring facility is out of use. For navigation purposes, it's almost as significant as closing the canal itself. Some of the reasons that the boats need to use the towpath would be stopping the boat in emergencies or routine stopping for maintenance. The towpath enables continuous access to land from the canal and vice versa. This sounds obvious, but it's an essential element to safe and effective navigation. The importance of continuous access is even greater for a boat trip like Arthur. Emergency stops are occasional and unpredictable. These include needing to stop because of engine failure, propeller entanglement, there's a lot of weed, plastic, ropes, etc. in the canal, unfortunately. It can happen at any time. So it's not like having a destination stop. When you need to stop, you need to stop and you need to be able to get off. For Arthur particularly, there's a more regular need to stop and pull into the bank. This arises from the intake sieve of the raw water-cooled engine needing to be emptied. Having a raw water-cooled engine is important for boat trips because it means that the engine is very quiet. It's quiet so passengers can hear the sounds of the water and the wildlife as they're transported through areas of canal away from noise pollution and out of earshot of traffic. However, emptying the inlet sieve cannot be carried out safely while passengers are on board while unsecured to the bank, and it's not predictable as to when the sieve will need emptying. At any time, weeds, stones, gravel, etc. can be sucked up into the intake sieve and cause a drop in water pressure. Currently, Sarah and Josie know where the safe mooring locations are in this area, and they can pull in as convenient. Can we have 1087, please? Okay, this map which you've just seen, where the crosses are and the little dark lines, they show the only possible mooring sites for Arthur. So most of these are, as you'll see shortly, are in the closed area of towpath. But Arthur can only moor in certain places for certain reasons. I'll explain that in a minute. Passenger boat operating regulations cite a number of reasons why it's necessary for the boat to be poured into the bank, including man overboard and passenger or crew incidents. Operating without suitable access to the canal bank involves breaches of passenger boat operational health and safety code. So you can see regular accessible mooring in this case is not just a practical necessity, but a legal requirement. In fact, I think it might be also worth reminding you at this point that this particular area of canal towpath is also important to boaters in general because of its proximity to Harefield Marina. It's usual for cruising boats to head for overnight moorings that are close to essential services such as water, diesel, gas, LSAN, toilet disposal, pump out, child away for maintenance, repair, etc. All of these which are provided by Harefield Marina. Northbound boats will therefore need to moor along the area of towpath planned for closure in order to access marina facilities before resuming their journeys the following morning. Back to morning.
Yeah, so basically it has to be able to stop there, and there are limited places where it's able to stop. So if we think then about the loss of passenger journey destinations, as you remember from what I said at the beginning, as you can see from the map, towpath closure along this stretch of the canal doesn't just have safety implications, but also it seriously restricts the options for journey destinations and therefore the range of trips that Sarah and Josie can offer. So it's got a business impact. If they haven't got places to go, because the customers aren't going to be there, are they? The trips are as much about places that they stop as much of the pleasure of floating along in the boat, whether that's the heritage of the 3 canal-related conservation areas that are in the area, or the environmental delights round about. It's not like other sort of boat trips where you just stay on and look at the view. The whole point of this is you're going to destinations and hopping on and off the boat all of the time. So Karen, can you explain why Arthur can't just moor on the other side?
Yes, right. So if you look at the picture again, public right-of-way U75 is the towpath, and that's shown with the red line on the west side of the Grand Union Canal. For most of the distance between Bridge 182 and Bridge 180, it's not possible to moor on the offside as the depth of the water is shallow here, and Arthur has a medium draft of 24 inches. That's not actually unusual. Most boats can't moor on the offside here. There are a few that can, just some of the smaller, the little boats, the little cruisers can sometimes.
Dredged.
Sorry?
It dredged.
Well, as I'll explain later, the other side of the reason that it's so shallow, the other side, I'll go into in a second. Okay. Can we have 1083, please? Right. Okay. So here you can see the offside. The offside bank can be seen overhanging with mature trees, branches, and roots. All these provide a habitat for insects, water birds and fish. It's one of the reasons that mooring on the towpath opposite is such a joy for boaters and passengers. It does mean, however, that these trees prevent boats mooring along the offside bank. In fact, I think there is only one area on the offside bank where Arthur could physically moor, and this is very close to the area designated for the HS2 crossing itself. Okay.
So they can't just moor on the other side. Thinking then about the floating along the canal and the passenger experience, that's such an important part of what customers are paying for. As we've already heard, the proposed section is used for the stops and activities, but a big part of the experience is the peace and tranquility of the whole thing. Construction noise is clearly going to carry along the canal for long distances, so all the activity that's happening on land on either side of the canal is going to be highly audible on the canal itself, as will the frequent bursts of extremely loud noise from the passing trains in perpetuity. Bear in mind, obviously, that a canal boat, the shell of a canal boat, has inherently much lower sound insulation properties than a building, so the kind of insulation solutions that are offered to, say, houses that are affected just don't apply on a boat. You can't double glaze something like Arthur. Even if it could, it would miss the point, as we've said. The inherent pleasure of a canal boat trip is that essentially it's an outdoor experience. People want to be outside most of the time. And this stretch of the canal is absolutely about that. It's where you want to be outside, looking, listening, walking on the bank, and stopping for picnics and so on. That's why boat trips have existed here for many years, and that's why Arthur is continuing the tradition. All right, the HS2, the environment statement, describes the stretch here between Harefield No. 2 Lake and Savay Lake. In environmental terms, it's just a small part of quite a large, ecologically rich area which is known as London's Canals, SMI, remind me.
Special Metropolitan
Interest, yeah. And that designation was for its wetland plants and water birds. So we feel it's a bit misleading to say it's just a little bit and the rest of it is okay. The Grand Union Canal north of Uxbridge is actually quite unique and special, probably for the sheer density of features that are available in this stretch, and that's precisely why it's sought after as a passenger destination. Nowhere else in the London Canal system comes anywhere close to the diversity and quantity of wetland plants, water birds, insects, dragonflies, etc., that thrive in the intended destruction site. You can't just go to another bit, for example, and find the same things in such concentration. And that's why we're particularly worried about the removal of vegetation along here associated with construction. It's not clear which bits will be removed, whether that's permanent or just for construction, where replanting is going to be, how long that will take. Particularly, there's questions around the areas of vegetation that will need to be cleared around the line itself in perpetuity. Sometimes we're told that there is a strip that will have to be kept completely clear. Visual images that were shown suggest that it's not, and that the trees will be flapping against the windows of the train as it crosses the canal along here. So we need clarity on that. Either is the vegetation going to go or is it not? And to what extent is that area going to be fragmented to the point that it won't give the experience that it does at the moment? All right, so that's the trip destinations and the passenger experience features that are integral to the business. We'll go back on to some more technical issues again, and here I'm going to ask Karen to explain what the concerns are around how the construction activity might affect the integrity of the towpath itself and then the water levels.
Okay, so safe and effective mooring requires a stable bank and a suitable water level. Our petitioners contend that HS2 plans pose a real threat to navigation on the Grand Union Canal for two main reasons: threat of damage to the canal bank and disturbance of the River Colne, leading to changed water levels. If we can have 1085, I'll first talk about the integrity of the canal bank. Okay, this picture shows how a towpath would have been constructed in this area particularly. Okay, firstly, the towpath itself actually supports the bank of the canal. The integrity of the bank is therefore paramount, and here we will have an 18th century infrastructure in close proximity to a 21st century construction site. HS2 plans give no indication of the fragility of the 18th century infrastructure of the canal. The Grand Union Canal was built between 1793 and 1805 in the reign of George III. The canal was built by hand and horsepower without mechanisation. As you can see in the diagram here, the towpath and canal are fundamental to each other, as the soil from the canal channel was used to construct the towing path. The towpath was normally constructed on the side of the canal where the land was lowest. That side needs a strong bank to prevent slippage and leakage. Thus, the towpath served two purposes: towing and the prevention of slippage and leakage. Can we have A1083, please? Right, here you can see what it looks like today. Practically unchanged from the basic design. We can see the towpath area here designated for towpath closure. So the stretch you see in the photo is the stretch which HS2 will need to close. The canal bank on the towpath side has been reinforced with wooden piles. You can just about see them if you look closely, all the way along. The construction of the towpath is original 18th century construction of compacted earth. It's unsuitable for motor vehicle access. The towpath runs along the top of the embankment created by the canal construction. Next to the embankment is a steep drop down, deeper than the canal depth, to where mature trees are now growing. So you can't see the drop down, but it is actually quite steep. It goes down much further than the bottom of the canal. HS2 plans show a section of towpath over a mile in length from bridge 182 to 180 as a stopped up right of way for a period of 3 years and 8 months. We now understand, after the meeting last Monday, that this may actually mean two separate stretches to be closed off at different times for shorter periods, but still up to 18 months in the larger area needed for national grid work. The plans show the towpath as joining several areas of potentially needed in the construction of HS2, but no explanation is given, and indeed wasn't given at the meeting either, as to what HS2 needs the intervening sections of towpath for. Vehicle and plant access is to be along the line of the railway, over surrounding fields and jetties on the lakes. There's never been any vehicle access to this section of towpath, and the 18th century construction work would not support vehicle access, particularly heavy vehicles, cranes, heavy plant or machinery. When HS2 are manoeuvring equipment into place around the towpath and canal banks, they really must be aware of the risk. They would be jeopardising the canal bank construction and threatening navigation. In addition to the structural integrity of the towpath, your petitioners are also concerned that the siting of construction compounds so close to the waterways is likely to cause dust, silt and polluting runoff, which would likely affect the ecology of the waterways in this important location. We are also concerned about the impacts of vibration during construction and during operation of the proposed railway on the stability of the canal and towpath.
Thanks, Karen. Basically, to sum up, the outstanding thing from where we are now, and I have to say, some of this came up at the Marina petition earlier in March, and we had hoped that by now things had moved on a little bit in terms of the thinking on this, but it doesn't seem to have happened, and there's certainly been no discussion with the Marina petitioners who made
no discussion at all.
Similar points. But what we need to know is what exactly is HS2 going to use the canal towpath for at this point? Why is it needed? Why does it have to be closed in between the two areas where the actual construction activity is going to happen, on the points that are not immediately adjacent to the line of construction? So that's the essence of what we're worried about on this. But we understand that surveys have yet to be carried out by HS2 to ascertain whether the canal can support the weight of anything that's to be done on it, and that applies equally to the surrounding areas, which is extremely boggy and marshy land. That's something that we feel needs to be done quite soon to enable the planning to take place. As you probably know, the Canal and River Trust is a charity, and it struggles to maintain these structures as things stand at the moment. And as petitioners, we would want some kind of commitment from HS2 that all possible mitigations are put into place to reduce any kind of risk of that kind of damage, and to make sure that the trust is reimbursed for any repairs and any breaches that have to be put right. As boaters, we don't accept that we should be liable as licence payers to the trust for finding funding to do that sort of thing. Basically, we want that financial burden, that financial risk to be borne by HS2 and not by the trust.
Canal Trust should be taking up.
Your
interest is obvious, but it's a bit indirect.
It's direct in that we're
with licence payers.
I understood that in my question, but I think that we may want to ask HS2 whether the Canal Trust have done something with it.
Yes, and I think the licence payers are stakeholders in those discussions.
We've agreed that. We've agreed that.
Yeah. All right then, let's move to slide P5295, please. It's a promoter exhibit, this one. We're going to move on to talk about the remaining confusion we have about how and when the towpath diversion route is going to be used and how that fits into things. So if we can look at that map, that will help explain. P5295. It's one that you provided to us.
Is that one of these?
Yeah.
It's 6366.
Oh, it's changed.
Yeah, sorry, it's got different numbers for the different petitions.
P6366.
Okay then. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I was just checking to make sure that the same information is on there. It is. All right, this map is one that was provided relatively recently and came with our bundle of slides that were just explaining the proposed additional provisions of the bill in relation to stopping up towpaths. So there's some information on here that was slightly more recent than anything we've seen before. However, the basic concept of the diverted towpath remains the same. As we can see, effectively, the plan is to stop up the bit on this side and have people use the part of the London Loop path which is on the other side. But as we've alluded to, we don't think this has been properly thought through. It's only been considered from a public right-of-way perspective. It is a path that walkers can use. It's not that great for cyclists, but that's another story. But it's not directly adjacent to the canal, and it is certainly not a towpath. As we've heard, it's not a permissible mooring location. It's too shallow for most boat drafts, and it's congested. But we're also particularly puzzled, and this is what we still need to understand, and it wasn't clear even from our meeting this week, is the inconsistency of that side being opened, and in fact the water itself remaining open and safe to use, while the activities on the towpath side are going on that are so apparently so dangerous that the towpath can't be used. They're very, very close together. So if there is something happening here that makes the towpath too dangerous to walk on, how come the water isn't dangerous, and how come the path on the other side isn't dangerous at the same time? So we need that to be teased out properly to ensure that in fact it is a viable option, at least for the walkers. But basically we feel the safety issue surely must affect all three sets of locations at the same time because they are so close together. So So that's our kind of outstanding concerns about the construction that's planned on and around the towpath. I'm going to ask Karen now to move on to petitioners' concerns about the water levels itself and how construction impacts on that.
Much more we've got.
Not much. No. A little bit on water, and then some thinking we've tried to do on alternatives that the business could pursue.
Can I have 1081, please?
A1081.
A1081, yeah. Okay. This picture was taken in the proposed HS2 construction zone and shows where the water level is too low to allow boats to pull into the bank during the dry period. You can see the bottom of the canal adjacent to the bank. It's actually quite shallow there. Okay, and if we can have 1082, please. Right, now this second picture shows flooding of the towpath after excessive rain. If you look to the left-hand side, you can see a pylon just at the top left here. Okay, this is the one adjacent to Howick, which HS2 are going to move. So you can see this stretch of canal is at the exact point of the construction site. HS2 plans refer to the alterations to the River Colne with resulting disturbance to the water table. As the Colne and its tributaries flow in and out of the canal at various locations along the Colne Valley, any changes in water volume or flow in the River Colne will have a direct impact on water in the Grand Union Canal. Seasonal changes to water levels already put pressure on the canal and infrastructure navigation in this area. Canal operating water levels cannot be altered without major engineering changes to the canal, and minimum clearances for navigation and towpath must be maintained at all crossings. Reduction in water available to the Grand Union Canal would result in a further reduction in mooring options, grounding of boats and damage to the bottom of boats. Increased water levels would lead to flooded towpaths and adjacent properties, difficulty operating locks, and sometimes even the stoppage of navigation.
Okay, so what we're concerned about is the worsening of a situation that already exists. No one's pretending we don't have to manage these situations from time to time as it is, but if it's intended to tinker about with the River Colne, which it clearly is, we need to be aware that there are quite numerous impacts that have to be considered. And again, I would just emphasise that canal boat users, particularly business users like Arthur, are important stakeholders in those discussions, and we're not aware that any of those discussions have yet taken place. We would ask for some involvement when they do take place. But above all, in the longer term, we ask that the promoter be required to maintain existing water levels and the standard minimum draft and the towpath clearances that the Canal and River Trust would specify for this area. They are laid out, and we want to see that explicitly addressed. So we've taken a romp through then the kind of technical issues around construction and operation that will affect the business. What we sense really is that by the time we take into account lengthy interruptions to navigation and damage to the nature of the valley, the nature of the trip, the experience of the trip, it's kind of adding up to a bit of a wipeout of everything that Arthur Daily Trips is all about. But it is a business, and businesses have to adapt, so we've tried to have a think about what the options might be. So could we have 1087 up again, just to we'll leave that up for the rest of our discussion. Okay. So as a business then, if that part of the canal is going to be so badly affected, Karen, could they not just run trips in the other direction? If you actually, Arthur Daily Trips is moored up at Uxbridge. If you actually run the trips in the other direction, which obviously is possible for them, you pass through Uxbridge, Cowley, West Drayton. They're essentially built-up areas, industrial, residential areas. They don't have very much countryside appeal. They're very flat. They have no views. On the whole, it's people coming from these areas that are taking the trips to the countryside. They don't necessarily want an urban experience, or most of them wouldn't want an urban experience. The unique nature of the Colne Valley is integral to the popularity of these trips, as is the experience going through locks in a rural environment. All right then. Plan B. How about scooting along the canal then, at pace? I'm thinking of the way Thames riverboats do. They zoom past the boring bits to get to the interesting bits. Could they do that? Just scoot along to Blackjack's and then start the more environmental bit from that end?
Well, no. basically. They can go along there certainly, but if they were to go along there before they started their trip, to get from Uxbridge to Blackdeck Lock could take anything 2 to 2.5 hours, depending on the time it takes to get through the lock, which obviously varies from 20 to 40 minutes. So you're talking about 2.5 hours in each direction added on to the time of the daily trip. So it's not an option.
What about relocation then? You know, go for the main option. Think this area is a non-starter. They're boaters. They know how to run boat trips. Could they just bite the bullet and move somewhere else?
If we're talking about moving their mooring site to an area north of the construction area, I think the main problem with this would be that Josie and Sarah actually live in Cowley. They don't drive. All their business is done, as Dorian explained earlier, it's all done in the old-fashioned way. They do it on public transport, they walk. They couldn't get to a mooring north of the area. If they were to take it one step further and move house, and I think that also that wouldn't really be a viable option. You're talking about the Chilterns and they live in Cowley. It's not an option to move from Cowley to the Chilterns for financial reasons. So no, I can't see any way that they can run their business around the closure of this area, quite frankly.
Okay, so it's a bit like Howie.
Yeah.
Very similar situation on a smaller scale. Well, that's us laying out our stall for Arthur's daily tours, Arthur's daily trips. Just to recap, it's one of many small businesses that both depend on this part of the Colne Valley and contribute to its appeal. We feel that canals and railways have coexisted since railways were invented, but not always to the mutual benefit of both. We're in the 21st century now, and we understand a lot more about the interplay between landscapes, people and economies. What we're asking is that we bring that 21st century understanding and sensitivity to this new coming together of rail and waterways and find a solution that works for all involved. We do believe that the current plans for HS2 threaten navigation, they threaten the integrity of the canal itself, they threaten the safety of passenger journeys, and they pose a huge threat to the environment around about it. It will destroy the tranquility and the beauty of this area, and that is the end of peaceful trips on a boat or anywhere else. It goes without saying that what we believe is that a tunnel solution would solve these problems and be more in keeping with a sustainable development strategy for the economy, one that allows local businesses to flourish as well as the environment. But in the course of making decisions about that, we'd specifically ask the committee to require that there's several specific things. Firstly, explicit and timely assessment, i.e. now, of the full range of structural and navigational impacts on this stretch of the canal and effective mitigation of the risks. So to date, I think we've talked about navigability relating to whether the water remains open. As we've tried to explain, there's a lot more to navigation than just the water. So we'd like that properly understood. We would like timely consultation with business users of the canal and towpath and a suitable compensation scheme identified for losses. And when we say timely, this is where there's opportunity to think about seasonality, about the kind of business planning cycles that business users need to have. Like Howie, forward planning is essential. And if we know...
One business, one or two others we have in mind.
The marina, people like that.
We heard that before.
Yes.
When we saw you before, I think.
Yes, yeah.
So today is the Arthur trips.
Arthur trips, yeah.
And you're saying there, the central point is, can the canal boat stop on a towpath safely? Will the towpath, the use of the towpath be replaceable in some way if it's blocked off? Those are the 2 points we need to really keep in mind.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Can't use it at all.
If you nearly stopped, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but please get to where you...
I've got 2 more bullet points here. That's it. Literally bullet points. So these are what we're asking for. We want the business needs to be properly addressed and recognised. We want some commitment to reduce in length and duration the closure of any part of the towpath and sensitive timing of that. This is where I'm talking about seasonality. It is a seasonal business. It shouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility to phase works in such a way that the worst of the closure happens at the quietest part of year for business users of the canal. And as we've said before, in all of these matters, we ask that the costs be factored in as part of the cost of the project and borne by the promoter and not passed on to canal users. And that's where we're finished.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Strawn.
Thank you. Will try and deal with this myself, but Mr. Smart's here if you want any further detail of the construction. But can I just while we got on screen 1087, just deal with this concern about stopping on the towpath? And you can see two particular locations that have been identified closest to the HS2 line on this map. I'm pointing them out there and there. If we could go straight to P6364, please. And I apologise if this is familiar territory, but I'll just remind you, if I may, of what's going on in this area. We just focus in on where the arrow is. This is where the viaduct crosses the canal. If you could just zoom in to that location, please. And if you can see that there are brown areas that stop short of the canal and then they continue on the other side of the canal. Those are the jetties from which work is carried out. The jetties don't go onto the canal itself. And I believe not onto the towpath itself. So, in fact, there isn't the sorts of works to the towpath that was being contemplated by the petitioner. There is, if I could just take you down the screen, you'll see here that there is a utilities diversion that takes place across, higher up the screen, the existing line and the utilities diversion, which is marked by the red dots. There is the need to take down one existing line and put up another by way of a utility diversion. Those are of the nature you've heard many times about. They would involve putting some netting under the existing line to take the line down, or the conductor, and then similar where you're putting up the new conductor. Those are short duration works. The netting's there for safety purposes, and during the course of those works there may be the need for temporary restrictions on the canal itself, but there are provisions, as I'm going to take you to, for notification of when those works occur. The closure of the towpath, and there seems to be a misapprehension, which I'll just try and clear up. I think we have actually explained this before, so I apologise for repetition. But if I could do P6366, just to be absolutely clear. This is showing the public rights of way, and the towpath, footpath that's the petition is referring to, U75, it's shown as stopped up, but it's explained, and we have explained this before, that it's not stopped up in the sense you cannot walk along it, you just can't connect past the working site. So whilst the works are going on to the viaduct area, there will be an inability to pass from one part of the towpath to the next. But
without swimming? Without swimming.
But if you have a boat, of course, you're not affected. And you will be able to continue to use the towpath as a boat, tying up to the towpath, getting off. All you won't, the restriction will be in the inability to pass to and from.
Continuous walk.
Exactly. That's explained in the note. And you recall the slide I showed a moment ago, the petitioner's slide of where they currently tie up. Both of those areas are not affected, so we don't anticipate any change to the current practice of their ability to tie up and do whatever they wish.
Which didn't actually mention the points we've been listening to, didn't mention them because they weren't a problem.
They're not a problem. Can I just put a further layer of protection in draw your attention to it, because we've referred to it in the past, but I think it's worth just reiterating for the purposes of these petitioners. In the context of the Canal and River Trust, there is an extraordinarily long statutory provision built into this bill in Schedule 31, Part 4. I don't know if we can get just an illustration of it, but paragraph 40, which we've referred the petitioner to. So we've got paragraph 40 there. And I'm not going to read it all out, but it's a specific, there it is, Part 4 starts along here. Specific provision dealing with the Canal and River Trust, who are responsible for this canal. And under these provisions, which run through to paragraph 40 through to 50, there are detailed requirements of what we are required to do, seeking approval for the Canal and River Trust for any specified work within 15 metres of the canal.
You meet the costs, and they will not unreasonably withhold approval.
Precisely. And there are provisions, specific provisions, for example, about not polluting the water and matters of that kind. I can give you an example in paragraph...
Water levels.
Exactly.
And we know the canal can flood anyway, and we know it can dry out inadvertently anyway. But HS2 won't contribute to either of those.
There's no, and I can make it clear now, there's no intention to, I think it was referred to as dewatering, or to materially reduce water levels in the canal, but in any event, we are required to have our works approved by the Canal and River Trust, where they're within 15 metres of the canal. So, because I make that point because assurances are being sought by the petitioner. That is entirely unnecessary, bearing in mind the far more detailed statutory provisions that already exist in relation to works in this area. So I anticipate, but I'm very happy to ask Mr. Smart to deal with any of that detail necessary. But in fact, when one analyses it, all of the concerns that have been raised by the petitioners now are actually ones which are addressed in the scheme and in these detailed mechanisms.
Okay, so, thank you, Mr. Strawn. Are you reassured?
I absolutely accept the explanation you've given about the provisions around the trust, but what we still don't have is a sense of the clarity on the works on these two actual points where the construction activity will take place, whether that's the pile-on associated work, which we were told as recently as Monday of this week in the meeting with HS2 could go on for up to 18 months at that point, and the viaduct construction itself, which again they explained would happen at a different time. As things stand at the moment, all we have is an indication that that whole area will be affected for a total period of around 3.5 years. We're getting little pieces of information about this bit might be 6 months, that bit might be 18 months. We still don't have a sense of how the towpath is going to work when sufficiently dangerous activities are happening on one side that apparently don't affect the others. So people are being protected on the one side of the towpath, but have to walk on the other side.
Can I suggest, can I suggest this is a constructive way forward? We are very happy to answer now any questions, outside the committee. Mr. Smart is here.
Can I suggest Mr. Smart spend the first 2 minutes of the lunch hour reassuring Doreen McIntyre about her client's concerns?
And we will give her any further information she wants about the detail.
I think that would be a sensible way forward.
I would look forward to that discussion. A similar one was promised in March when these issues were raised and has not taken place, so I would like it to happen in some kind of formal way.
If anybody else is listening to us, you're the second person today. When offered something you should say yes please to, tell us what happened in the past. It won't help. Please.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. Very comprehensive. We're now going to meet at 2 o'clock for Cheryl Gillan and the final petitioner, Ian and Susan Howie. Okay, order.